Part 80. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 824. No. No, absolutely not, the human figure covered in thick fog muttered. Why not? If I can't go out, I will be contaminated sooner or later if I stay here, in this case. 33 was interrupted by the other party before he could finish his words. If you return to the Ark, you will bring the pollution back with you. The other party's tone suddenly became cold and hard, which made 33 feel a little vigilant. He took the black flying blade that had just been withdrawn was released again. Are you planning to keep me here? 33 said solemnly, since I can no longer escape the fate of being contaminated, you should at least let me know the ins and outs of the whole thing, even if I die, I want to be a wise man. No. The polluted will not die, either body, or soul, will become a part of him, never, will rest, for humans, that is, never. There is no end to torture. The humanoid figure covered in thick fog stood up, holding the steel pipe that penetrated the chest with both hands, and slowly pulled out the steel pipe while saying it. Who is he? Does he mean the great god believed in by the Alpha civilization? What does the never-ending torture mean? 33 knew that the battle with the guy in front of him was inevitable, but before the fight started, I still want to ask as many questions as possible. I can't save you, but at least, I won't let you become his sacrifice. The other party held the steel pipe tightly in his right hand. Although the twist-shaped fracture at the front end was covered with rust, but it is still sharp, and it is extremely lethal visually. If you are stabbed by this thing. There should be a tetanus vaccine in the medical bag, right? 33 took half a step back, summoned nearly 100 black flying blades, and combined them into a kite-shaped shield in front of him. 33 I don't want to try the feeling of being stabbed by this thing, whether it is penetrated to the vital part or just scratched a layer of skin, you know, this thing is pulled out from the opponent's body. Who knows, besides all kinds of bacteria and viruses on it, besides, he also carried something strange. His power is reviving. They tried to fight, but failed. They bought us time, but we arrived much later than expected. Time, there is very little left, and sacrifices must be prevented as much as possible. After saying this, the human figure covered in thick fog suddenly rushed towards 33 with this tetanus spear. What did you say? Why is his power resurrecting? Tell me clearly. 33 had already controlled the flying blade in the dark to shoot at the opponent, but the first sentence of what the opponent just said made him. 33 abruptly interrupted the attack. This paragraph is intermittent and the number of words is very small, but it contains an explosive amount of information. It is a pity that at this critical juncture, all 33 can do is to emphasize this paragraph word for word. Write it down, there is no time to chew it carefully. Clang. The tetanus spear hit hard on the shield made of flying blades. This huge force immediately shattered the shield. Those uncontrollable black flying blades flew in all directions, and some even missed it. The 33 people standing behind the shield were scratched. Of course, this is also related to the fact that 33 was distracted and thinking about what the other party just said. Controlling and manipulating hundreds of flying blades would have been a heavy mental load, and coupled with the distraction, he had enough. It took half a second to regain control of these flying blades, and formed a mini shield the size of 8 palms in front of him. Rather than saying it is a mini shield, it is more appropriate to call it a heart mirror. The opponent's spearhead was pointed directly at 33's heart. He simply shrunk the defense area, and each piece of heart mirror are composed of more than a dozen overlapping flying blades, and their defensive power is several times stronger than the original large and unreal kite-shaped shield. The tetanus spear in the opponent's hand pierced 5 breast guards in a row, and did not stop until the 6th breast guard. The originally sharp twist-shaped spear tip had also been penetrated at this moment. It was squeezed into a mess of iron blocks. Although ARC has very high standards for the materials used in building warships, this steel pipe is only an air supply pipe inside the ship and not the external armor or the main stress-bearing frame. No matter how high the material requirements are, it still means high performance. The anti-corrosion alloy is mixed with less than 5/1000ths of nano alloy. Compared with the black flying blade forged from 100% nano alloy, the strength is not at the same level. If the heart guard made of stacked black flying blades is regarded as a 1 mm thick steel sheet, then this steel pipe is equivalent to a thin wafer biscuit at best. Being able to break through 5 heart mirrors in a row is entirely dependent on the opponent's extremely terrifying explosive power. This guy's strength actually rivals Asano Akira's. In Sanzan's impression, among those who have fought with him, only Asano Akira can achieve this level, Valentina not counting Hizilugo. The former relied on the power of the mecha, while the latter was simply a loser. According to 33's own estimation, a single layer of his spirit guard can at least block direct fire from a large caliber hunting pistol within a distance of 10 meters, and 3 layers can block bullets from an anti-material sniper rifle. The opponent instantly broke through 5-layer. The explosive power of this thrust is at least equivalent to the 25 mm caliber cannon on a light vehicle. It seems that I underestimated this guy's strength before 33 quickly retreated and distanced himself from the opponent. From the perspective of a small-scale battle position, he is not actually a melee character, and certainly not one. The control range of the long-range ADC and black flying blade is still not as good as that of firearms. If I had to define a position, it would be a mid to long-range assassin or output-type support. The black flying blades that had been in place before were launched at the same time, shooting at the opponent's vital points, cheeks, throat, heart, waist, lower body. At the same time, the same number of flying blades were aimed at the ankles and knees, a joint that can restrict the opponent's movement. 33 didn't know if the vital points belonging to humans still existed after the other party became like this, but he didn't mind pricking the other party like a hedgehog at all. Since it was difficult to kill him with one blow, he just chose saturation attack. But just when the tips of these black flying blades had just penetrated the layer of gray mist covering the opponent's body, 33 instantly found that all the connections between himself and the flying blades were cut off, just like in the forest. These out-of-control black flying blades seemed to be stabilized by some kind of force. The next second, they fell to the ground one after another, making a clanging sound. Nearly 3 seconds later, 33 sensed the existence of these falling flying blades again. Before that, these flying blades seemed to have disappeared from his mental perception. He could see the ones on the ground. Flying blades, but cannot touch them with his own abilities. The gray fog covering this guy's body is the same as the thick fog in the forest. I should have thought of this earlier. 33 felt a little guilty in his heart. Fortunately, the current situation has not completely fallen into a disadvantage. Otherwise, he might not even have time to blame himself. The front end of the steel pipe has turned into a ball of iron and lost its sharpness, but the opponent simply used it as a war hammer. Every time he swung it, it made a roaring sound, and every time it hit hard, it can smash an oncoming heart mirror into pieces. Since ancient times, the most useful armor-breaking weapons are not sharp weapons, but powerful and heavy blunt weapons. The existence of war hammers is to directly smash enemies wearing heavy armor to pieces. The usual flying blade cannot tear open the opponent's mist armor, and one's own defense methods can only withstand one attack from the opponent, and the opponent's second attack will come before the next piece of guard mirror is gathered and formed. This attack, the frequency is not like a war hammer at all, but like a dexterous dagger. 33 could only keep retreating, trading space for time. Fortunately, the corridor was long enough, and he still had enough time to think of countermeasures before being forced into a dead corner. The flying blade's long-range attack is ineffective, so it is estimated that only close combat can cause effective damage to this guy. No, before that, you can at least try the firearm. After all, bullets are powered by gunpowder, not that mysterious spiritual force. Although the black flying blade is 33's main means of combat, as a retired veteran, his skills with guns are not bad at all. After a newly formed Heart Guard was shot away by the opponent, 33 took out the large caliber hunting pistol at his waist while striding back, holding the gun in the central axis heavy locking system posture. Secure the pistol to your waist and pull the trigger continuously. Ba! 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 The deafening gunshots unique to hunting pistols echoed in the corridor, and 3 0.5-inch caliber bullets all penetrated into the gray fog, but the opponent's figure only sluggish for a brief moment, and then waved the warhammer towards him again. 33 smashed over. The bullets are effective, although they can only cause a very short pause, at least they are not completely useless. They can be used as an auxiliary means at critical moments. 33's brain quickly entered the thinking mode he was used to. This was a thinking mode exercised on the ever-changing battlefield, but what runs faster than his brain is his body. Another piece of heart-protecting mirror quickly gathered and formed. After blocking the blow, 33 advanced instead of retreating and rushed to the opponent's left side. The pistol at his waist fired all the remaining bullets in the magazine in one breath, and the other hand grabbed the nano-alloy dagger that ejected from the scabbard in the air, and moved forward with force. Hand it over, it stabbed into the opponent's ribs. Since you can't control the weapon to penetrate the mist with your mind, just use your hands directly. If the opponent can even block this, then 33 really has nothing to do. The tip of the nano-alloy dagger seemed to be wrapped in a ball of extremely tough rubber. A strong torque came from the hilt. 33 felt as if the dagger would be released at any time. He pretended to lose it and hit it empty. Instead of holding the magazine of the pistol, he clenched it with both hands and vigorously stirred the sword. Ah! The human figure wrapped in grey mist let out a howl. It grabbed the part of the short sword that was still exposed outside the body with one hand, preventing 33 from continuing to poke the tip of the sword inward, and picked up the warhammer with the other hand. Hit 33's head. In a competition of strength, 33 was naturally no match for this guy. He could only choose to give up the nano-alloy dagger and jump back. At least this guy will feel pain, which means there will be more beatings. 33 wiped the blood on his face. Although he had just narrowly avoided the falling warhammer, the strong wind attached to the hammerhead still scratched his cheek. Just imagine what it would be like if this hammer fell solidly on your body. I stabbed this guy with a sword. This guy seemed to be fully capable of fighting, but I definitely couldn't take the opponent's blow. I have to be careful. Bullets can penetrate the gray fog, so maybe I can use inertia to accelerate the flying blade first, then give up control of the flying blade when it gets close to the gray fog, and let the flying blade use inertia to penetrate the gray fog and hit this guy's body. But the problem is that judging from the obstruction just caused by the dagger, it is estimated that the piercing force of inertia alone cannot cause any damage. P.S. Thanks to Brother Menman and Wandering DNA Vest for the 1,500 starting coins. Thanks to February Hanfin for the 100 starting coins. Unexpectedly, I mentioned it casually yesterday, and someone rewarded it today. It seems that they are all good friends who have read the latest chapter. Thank you very much. I probably masturbated too much recently, and my tenosynovitis has occurred again. Today's chapter is quite painful. All video games and masturbation activities have been suspended, and fitness projects that require the use of fingers have also been suspended. I hope it can be relieved as soon as possible, but it still hurts a lot. Let's take a look and cherish it. Maybe I will suddenly ask for leave. Speaking of which, I obviously don't update too much. 4,000 a day is a starting point for perfect attendance. In this era when the average person has 10,000 words a day, I am definitely considered the lazy dog among the lazy dogs. I don't know why those code word tentacles are there. I have all kinds of strange occupational diseases, tenosynovitis, cervical spondylosis, etc. I originally thought that it would be better after I started exercising, but when I was doing deadlifts last month, I accidentally suffered from cervical spine compensation because my core muscles were not strong enough. As a result, it hurt for half a month. I still hope that everyone can pay attention to their health, exercise more, exercise scientifically, stand up and walk more after sitting for a long time, and stay up less late. Don't be like me, who suffered from all kinds of problems before the age of 30. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 825. Just as 33 was frantically thinking about the next battle strategy, a big hole suddenly exploded on one side of the corridor, and the human figure wrapped in grey mist was immediately slapped to the ground. It struggled to get up, but could not lift its body even 1 centimeter. It's like there's an invisible hand holding it down. Before the smoke and dust caused by the explosion began to dissipate, an equally invisible barrier had already cleared away the smoke and debris on the ground, and a familiar figure walked into the corridor through the blasted hole. Huh, Kaylan, you came here really fast. 33 couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. It seems like the place you were teleported to should be quite close to here. Teleport? Kaylan was stunned for a moment and looked at 33 with some confusion. Weren't you teleported to another place? Anyway, the moment I stepped into the grey mist, I was teleported to this place. 33 also looked puzzled. This should be another battleship, Genoa's interior. I know this is the Genoa, but you probably haven't been teleported. Kaylan quickly reacted and told 33 about the memory tampering and sleepwalking. I walked into this battleship by myself. 33 rubbed his face vigorously. So, I was the first one you found among the lost people. Well, if you don't count Emoju. Kaylan nodded. I have no clue where the others went. After checking the data stored in the central control computer of the Shaojiankai, I just decided to go to another crashed warship to check it out, and I happened to encounter you fighting this thing. What about the others? Where are you going to find them? It's not practical for me to go find them. If their consciousness regains consciousness, they should choose to move towards the core area. Kaylan said. This place is still more than 10 kilometers away from the core area, but you are right. If you go to find them now, not only will you not be able to find them, but you may also get lost. It is better for everyone to share the same place. Set it as the ultimate goal, and then it's up to you. One more thing, at first I thought the sleepwalking time was the same as Emoju's, but 6 hours have passed since we were separated, and you must have just woken up, right? Well, that's right. 33 nodded. Except for that deleted memory, I was in that smoking room as soon as I woke up, walked to the corridor, and met this guy. There should be no more than 20 minutes. It seems that the length of time for each person sleepwalking is not fixed, so it is even more impossible to determine how far they will go while in the state of sleepwalking. Tisk. Kaylan clicked his tongue, with a look on his eyebrows. I couldn't help but feel a little irritable. There are so many weird phenomena happening in this forest that even S-class ruins cannot compare to this place. By the way, where are the Moja people? 33 asked. Here. Kaylan tugged on the safety rope in his hand and pulled a single rescue cabin into the corridor. What's up with her? Contaminated by forbidden knowledge, this kind of thing can only spread through cognition. Her body has undergone some mutations. In order to prevent the mutation from getting worse or infecting other people, I think it is better to find a container to contain her. It's better to get up. Tisk. Cognition is pollution. This guy said the same thing just now. 33 pointed at the human figure that was pressed to the ground by the force of space and could not move. Is this guy, once a crew member of the Genoa? Well, and it can understand and speak Chinese. I also had a brief exchange with it, but we started fighting after a disagreement. If you hadn't suddenly come in, I would have thought about it at this time. Why did you run away? After hearing 33 say that he had communicated with this humanoid, Kaylan couldn't help but become nervous. He stared at 33 for a long time, and then relaxed slightly after finding that the other party's body showed no signs of mutation. What's wrong with you? 33 was a little embarrassed by Kaylan and couldn't help asking. See, you are not as unlucky as Emoju. Kaylan said, you should know what cognition is pollution means, right? Is it possible that my body will mutate just by listening to a few words from this guy? Is this too exaggerated? It's not an exaggeration at all. You're just lucky that you didn't mutate. Kaylan patted San's shoulder. This thing varies from person to person. Some people have weak resistance and may turn into monsters after hearing just a few words. As he spoke, Kaylan subconsciously glanced at the single rescue cabin next to him. Huh, so it seems that my resistance is relatively strong. You might as well say that you are lucky, Kaylan sighed, but no matter what, for the sake of safety, you should not continue to communicate with this guy. Leave the rest to me. By the way, this guy said a few words to me just before the fight started. I wrote it down, 33 said, repeating a few words that the figure said to him to Kaylan. Tisk. After listening to 33's retelling, Kaylan pinched his chin and fell into deep thought. There is actually a big difference between the situation of the Genoa high-speed support ship and the Xiaojiangkai frigate. Judging from the combat video, the main reason for the crash of the Xiaojiangkai was that Rooney and the others detonated it inside the ship. The small tactical nuclear bomb caused irreparable damage to the hull, causing the entire battleship to lose power, and the Genoa fell directly to the ground due to the helmsman's operating error. In more rigorous terms, the Xiaojiang modified frigate can actually be regarded as a crash landing, while the Genoa is a true comet hitting the Earth, a head-on collision with the ground. Kaylan learned from the central control computer AI of Xiaojiangkai that in fact, Xiaojiangkai did not directly hit the ground. The helmsman can really bear the name of godly helmsman in the battleship because of the internal. When the nuclear bomb exploded and lost power, he still managed to control the overall balance of the ship, allowing the entire Xiaojiang modified frigate to glide for nearly 4 kilometers in the canopy, relying on the obstruction of the canopy to maximize eases the inertia of the fall. If it weren't for the extreme operation of this amazing helmsman, so many people on the Xiaojiangkai frigate would never have survived after the battleship crashed. The Genoa is completely different. From the crew member who was stabbed to the core by the air supply pipe, we can know that after the battleship landed, there may not be a few living people on the entire battleship. Not to mention anything else, the terrifying G-force when it fell and the shockwave that spread throughout the entire battleship in an instant when it hit the ground were enough to kill most of the people on the ship. Even if you don't die, you will fall into a coma due to brain congestion. Without the ability to repair the life support devices in the ship in time, coma is actually no different from death. Therefore, even if there are survivors on the Genoa, they will not be in large numbers. It is absolutely impossible for them to have the ability to explore the grey mist forest as deeply as Rooney and the others did. Moreover, the human figure wrapped in grey mist in front of us must have been completely dead when the battleship crashed. It is impossible for it to have the chance to run into the forest and accept erosion. What exactly made it resurrection and obtain those forbidden knowledge? In other words, it is precisely because of the acquisition of forbidden knowledge that it is resurrected? This question is like asking which came first, the chicken or the egg. It is impossible to draw an accurate conclusion by relying on pure logical reasoning. What should I say? You should be able to understand what this guy said, right? 33 waited for a long time and saw that Kaylan didn't speak, so he took the initiative to ask. Kaylan nodded silently. Then what do you mean? 33 paused mid-sentence. Wait a minute, don't you tell me because you are worried that I will also mutate. Then what? Cognition is pollution. Well, there are too many secrets involved in this, and they can all be classified into the category of forbidden knowledge. Even if you have nothing to do now, if I tell you those things, maybe you will become it in an instant. This is what it looks like, Kaylan said, pointing to the human figure pressed to the ground by the force of space. Tisk, okay, I understand. But why are you okay? Are you the legendary chosen one? The protagonist in movies and novels, 33 complained in a joking tone. I am an object created by the undead crew. Kaylan showed a helpless smile. although I have always thought of myself as a human being, the facts are right in front of me, and I have to admit that I am indeed related to you are different. That old dog guy said that as long as you think you are a human being, even if you become a piece of rotten meat, you will still be a human being. Don't think too much, 33 said solemnly. Don't worry, I won't go too far on this kind of issue. But one thing I can tell you is that there is a high probability that the undead crew will create an experimental body specifically to deal with this kind of incident, so for this kind of pollution and corrosion, I have a resistance far beyond that of ordinary people. Understood, 33 nodded. Then what to do next? Interrogate this guy? You don't have to look at me all the time. I know that I won't peek or eavesdrop. I'm right outside. Wait, just come out to me directly after your interrogation is over. After saying that, 33 walked out of the big hole that Kaylan exploded, and by the way, he also dragged out the rescue capsule containing Emoju. Next, it's time to get down to business, Kaylan said to himself and walked slowly to the side of the human figure. This guy should be considered a corroded corpse, right? People from the Immortal Crew Association said that what happens after super eclipse is different, which means that eclipse also has different forms, so this guy's appearance and ability are so different from Hruni's. That makes sense. Zeelugo, can you remove the layer of gray fog covering this guy? I'm quite curious as to what its true appearance is. As soon as Kaylan finished speaking, the gray fog on the human figure was peeled off, revealing its body that had been hidden under the fog armor. This is a lean, mummy-like human body. The dry skin is tightly attached to the body. There is no hair or any proliferative tissue. The only two things that are different from human mummies are, first, it is second, where its skin is damaged, what is exposed is not dark red flesh or other subcutaneous tissue, but a dark, asphalt-like gelatinous substance. Judging from the divisions of these gelatinous substances, all the muscles in this corroded corpse should have been replaced by this thing, and the function of this thing should be the same as that of human muscles. Kaylan took out a dagger and poked the black gelatinous substance gently. He found that this substance was extremely strong. With Ian's 9th level enhanced human strength, he used nearly 80% of his strength before the tip of the dagger let go. A small piece of it penetrated. The strength of this thing has surpassed the Type I high-strength synthetic rubber that the Research Institute took 20 years to develop. The latter is a buffer material used between armor alloy layers, but this material itself is also as strong and tough as the alloy. It can be said to have the highest physical strength among the rubber-like synthetic materials that can be mass-produced by human civilization. Yes. The corpse that Hruni turned into is very weak, and this corpse should be classified as a combat type. Kaylan analyzed one by one in his heart. As for the gray mist covering the body, there should be 2 layers. The defensive function is only one of its functions. The most important function is probably to cover its current appearance so that 33 cannot see its true appearance. 33 also said just now that this guy was not hostile at first, and has been warning 33 not to come into contact with those forbidden knowledge. And the true appearance of this eroded corpse can be regarded as part of the forbidden knowledge. You can understand what I'm saying, right? Kaylan pulled out the dagger, patted the opponent's shoulder with the blade, and then relaxed the space force that suppressed it a little. The corpse immediately turned its head and stared at Kaylan with its eyes that were so turbid that it was difficult to distinguish the whites, corneas, and pupils. It stared at Kaylan for more than 10 seconds before speaking with some difficulty. This is impossible, the degree of your pollution is far higher than mine. Why can you still maintain this appearance? Its tone was full of confusion and shock, and a hint of panic. P.S. Thanks to Brother Menman for the 1,500 starting coins, thanks to Maggie's cat for the 500 starting coins, thanks to book friend 201707062203272773 for the 100 starting coins. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 826. You want to know why I haven't broken through the critical point of erosion, right? Kaylan responded, just in time. I also have a lot of things I want to ask you. You see, we both have the information the other wants, so we can definitely make an exchange. To be honest, I know that you are not hostile to my friend, so I don't want to treat you as an enemy. There is no need for the communication between us to be conducted in the form of an interrogation. You are not human, seriously, polluted. You must not go to the Ark. The skeleton said intermittently. It struggled in vain, and its eyes were not on Kaylan from beginning to end. Moved away. To be honest, under such circumstances, you can still care about the safety of human civilization. I sincerely respect you. Kaylan did not wear a hat. He could only put on the breathing mask and then take it off. He bowed slightly to the corpse that was pressed to the ground. His actions were completely sincere. You, who are you, what are you? Ian's bow failed to move the corpse, and the other party was still struggling. You, what kind of monster are you? To be honest, being called a monster by something that looks more like a monster than me makes me a little frustrated. Kaylan squatted down, but I have to admit, what you said is not wrong. I am indeed a monster. But I am also a human being, Kaylan said immediately. No. You are just a disguised body, said the corpse with some difficulty. Body. Why does it also mention the body? This is not the first time Kaylan has heard this statement. The last time, it was at the bottom of the underground ice house of the Institute. The monster cloned with its own cells, Seraph, also used the word body to describe myself. This is no coincidence. Kaylan always believes that there is no coincidence in anything in this world. The so-called coincidence is just that people are unwilling to trace the reasons in depth. Even if what they say is true and I am really a body, then what is inside my body? A soul with both human and alpha blood? But this is no different from the current situation. Kaylan had long known that alpha human gene fragments had been inserted into his genetic sequence, otherwise he would not have been called a symbiote by the undead crew. But he always felt that this matter would not be so simple. Especially those memory fragments that were sealed deep in his mind, that he could feel but could never touch. This was not something that could be created simply by gene editing. They're just too fishy. Kaylan initially thought that these sealed memory fragments came from the broken stone tablet in the glacier ruins, but as he came into contact with more and more events and obtained more and more information, he became more and more aware of this idea. It is wrong. That stone tablet is not an artifact used to store information, but a key. Its function is to activate the connection between Kaylan and these memory fragments, and these memory fragments, in Kaylan becoming a relic hunter, was already in his head. Why do you think I am a body? Kaylan looked at the corpse. Where did you get this information? You are his minions. Can we still communicate well? I think you are very hostile to me. Kaylan sighed helplessly. If you are worried that I will be contaminated and refuse to tell me the truth, then I think it is unnecessary. You also said that my level of contamination is much higher than yours. I have not mutated, and the part of forbidden knowledge you know is just a piece of cake for me. Seeing that the other party still refused to let go, Kaylan could only continue to persuade. To tell you the truth, I came from the Ark. If I really wanted to do something harmful to mankind, I would have already done it. Why do you come here to argue with you? Your purpose is the things in the nest. Erosion still didn't believe Ian's words, but his words unexpectedly revealed something about Ian's past. Information that no one knows. The nest city, Kaylan immediately asked. You mean that there is no engine wreckage site mentioned in your mission description in the core area of the Grey Mist Forest, but a place called the Hive City? Right? Can you tell us in detail everything about that hive, And how did you discover it? Have you ever left the wreckage of the Genoa? Have Rooney and Amos Woyui ever been here? Hive. Kaylan asked a series of questions in one breath, and he couldn't help but get excited. After going around in circles for so long, the incident finally made a substantial breakthrough. As long as he can continue to investigate along this line, Grey Fog Forest, the truth in the core area is about to come out. But just when Kaylan was about to use some unconventional means to interrogate, the face of the corpse showed an expression of extreme pain. The asphalt-like black gel came from its nose, mouth, corners of the eyes, and ear canals. And all the damaged places on the skin flowed out. Kaylan noticed that when these black colloids were in a solid state, they could coexist peacefully with the original skin of the corpse, but when they turned into a liquid state, it is extremely corrosive, and wherever it passes, all the skin it touches will be peeled off and corroded away. The corpse roared in agony, and it said intermittently, "I can't let you return to the Ark, you must stay here forever. This guy is dead a long time ago. What drives it is just a ray of obsession. You can't convince it." Ze Logo's voice rang in Ian's ears. "It is just a body that relies on the remaining energy in its body to move. The Walking Dead is completely different from Hruni." "You mean, the Hruni we saw on the bridge of the Shaojiankai frigate is alive?" Kaylan raised his eyebrows. "A monster like erosion. Is there a difference between life and death?" "What I mean by life and death is just the part of them that belongs to humans," Ze Logo explained, "but if you can still see Hruni, he should have become like this." "So, Hruni was really dead at that time?" "Well, not long after you came into contact with him, the human part of him completely died. After that, you can use it to refer to the remaining remains. If you want to use human vocabulary to describe this part, I think the word humanity in human language is the most appropriate from all aspects. It has to be said that it is a miracle that Hruni's humanity can persist under his erosion for so long. So it seems that I killed him." Kaylan was a little helpless. "If I hadn't woken him up, he would have been able to hold on longer, right? His humanity can indeed survive longer in a dormant state, but this is actually meaningless. Nightmares have been eroding his consciousness. Even if you don't wake him up, his remaining humanity will remain there. The sleep gradually wore away. You at least allowed him to have a moment of clarity at the last moment. For him, this ending is not too bad." "Well." Here Kaylan is still whispering to Ze Logo. "On the other side, the skeleton pressed to the ground by the force of space has completed its transformation. If its original appearance is like a dried mummy, then it is now a mummy fished out of an asphalt barrel. Its power has increased by about 3 times, and the physical strength of its body has increased by about 5 times, and it is still getting stronger," Ze Logo said. "However, with her spatial ability, even if the power of the corpse is increased 100 times, she still can't break free. Is there any way to force it to speak and reveal information related to the hive?" Kaylan asked. "It is difficult to achieve this goal through normal communication methods," Ze Logo replied. "Then can you read its memory?" "I remember, you have read my memory before, right?" Kaylan said. When they first met, Ze Logo's first human form was a white-haired Lolita. That was entirely because she read relevant things from Ian's memory, the two-dimensional aphrodisiacs collected in this guy's computer. In the picture, more than 90% of the heroines have one thing in common: white hair. I can try to read its memory, but I need to be attached to its body. The thinking mode of the corpse is completely different from that of humans. Every corpse is connected to it. If I rashly invade, there is a high probability that the corroded mind will be watched by him. Forget it, the risk is too great." Before Ze Logo finished speaking, Kaylan rejected the idea. "But this is the only way," Ze Logo continued. "I can find a way to separate a copy and let the copy perform this task. Even if it attracts his attention, only one copy will be destroyed. That's all." "Does the loss of a clone have any impact on you?" "Yes, but it's not serious. It will take up to 3 months to recover, Ze Luo answered truthfully. It still doesn't work. In the grey mist forest, your combat power must be protected first, not to mention that we have to go to the place called the Hive next. In addition, if he is setting his sights on if you glance to the side while making a clone, none of us can escape. Kaylan shook his head. There is another thing you said wrong, this is not the only way. Huh? Why? Ze Luo asked confused. I know that in ARC's Research Institute, there are some devices that can forcibly read human memories. But these devices are only targeted at humans with basically sound brain functions. The brain has been severely atrophied and has lost all functions, and those devices will not have any effect on it. What's more, it is impossible to bring out a device that covers an area of hundreds of square meters. No, I'm not talking about the equipment invented by humans, but the creation of Alpha civilization, Kaylan explained, but the premise is that we must find Valentina first. Are you talking about the blasphemer Mecha? Yes, Kaylan nodded. Didn't I mention before that when Valentina and I were piloting the blasphemer Mecha, our consciousnesses were connected to each other through the body and entered into a kind of consciousness sharing state? In fact, what is shared is not only consciousness, but also each other's memories. I can see Valentina's past memories, and she can also see mine, but most of my memories are those of the undead crew. The false memories entered. Kaylan paused and continued, during a battle, it is very dangerous to indulge in the opponent's memory, but if the blasphemer Mecha is just used as an interrogation tool, I don't think so. Question. Although Kaylan is not sure whether the neural connection of the blasphemer Mecha can be used on corruption, after all, not only has corruption's brain shrunk, but the nervous system in the body has basically been scrapped. Even if those fleshy tentacles can pierce the tough body of the corpse, is probably unable to connect to the nervous system of the corpse. But the brief synchronization state before gave Kaylan a wonderful feeling. The connection between him and Valentina did not come from the tentacles connected to the spinal nerves. After all, these tentacles connected, it's just the spine, and it doesn't go deep into the brains of the two people. Logically speaking, what can be synchronized between them is just the various signals sent by the brain to the body. It is impossible for something as outrageous as reading each other's memories to happen. This magical synchronization function seems to come from another function of the blasphemer Mecha. Obviously, neither Kaylan nor the Undead Crew Association have yet to completely analyze this machine. As for those mass-produced fallen angel is just a poor imitation. Kaylan suddenly felt that, the name blasphemer didn't just sound domineering, it seemed to have another layer of meaning. Regardless, it's at least worth a try. Isn't it more dangerous to synchronize the consciousness with the corpse? Ze Luo said, as his sacrifice, every corpse should be under his surveillance. If your consciousness is synchronized with the corpse, isn't it? Is this equivalent to actively exposing myself to his sight? Is this any different from my method? My reason tells me that you are right, but my intuition tells me that the blasphemer Mecha can allow me to successfully achieve this goal. In more concrete terms, my subconscious has always believed that, the blasphemer Mecha, it can block his gaze to a certain extent. The subconscious mind that Kaylan was talking about was actually some fragmentary information leaked from those sealed memory fragments. He found that the more forbidden knowledge he accepted, the deeper the erosion was. These memories, the seal becomes looser. The closer he gets to the critical point of super eclipse, the closer he gets to the truth. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen San. Chapter 827. Bang. A loud sound suddenly came from the feet. The corpse, which was pressed to the ground by the force of space and could not move, actually cut through the floor and fell into the cabin on the bottom floor. Only then did Kaylan realize that he had overlooked a problem. When the power of the corroded corpse increases to a certain extent, although it still cannot resist Ze Luo's space power, the alloy battleship laminate is no longer useful to it. It's as indestructible as before. Chase. The ground suddenly sank, and the terrifying Space Force tore through the more than 1 meter thick alloy layer like tearing paper, instantly creating a large hole with a diameter of 2 meters under Ian's feet. The next floor of the corridor is the battleship's weapons depot. In addition to the ammunition locked in the storage compartment, several large hangars also contain tactical mechas for land warfare and carrier-based aircraft that have not had time to attack. Thanks to the protection of the magnetic levitation base, most of these mechas and carrier-based aircraft are relatively well preserved. Even the VF-2000 Jolly Flag variable fighter that has been fixed on the electromagnetic catapult is not on the battleship. He was thrown out when he hit the ground. The broken corpse had already run hundreds of meters away in less than half a second. His feet kicked hard on the ground, leaving 2.5 palm deep footprints on the metal ground. With this explosive force, he jumped into the air nearly 20 meters high. He stretched out his arms and hung on a protruding frame on the top of the hangar. The corpse turned over in the air, and its claw-like fingers penetrated directly through the top partition. The entire body clung to the ceiling of the hangar, crawling up like a gecko. It seems to be able to sense the changes in space. Whenever Kaylan drives the power of space to approach the corpse, it will run in the opposite direction in advance. In just a few seconds, the corpse has moved to the fixed frame. The catapult is directly above the VF-2000. Immediately afterwards, the corpse loosened its fingers and fell straight next to VF-2000, making a loud noise. Could this guy look like this, and still fly a fighter jet? Kaylan couldn't help but feel a little surprised. The VF series fighter jets are the first transformable fighter jets put into actual combat in the history of ARC. They are different from the Type 24 Vanguard mechas that appeared in the Leviathan battle. The transformation capabilities of the VF series fighter jets are not complete, although they have it has a certain landing combat capability, but few pilots use this function. In the pilot circle of that era, there was always a joke: Vikings are not as good as chickens when landing. The names of the VF series fighters basically come from things related to the Vikings in the old era, and these Vikings are also called Vikings. Over time, the VF series fighters have an additional Viking fighter title. The reason why it is called a Viking fighter instead of a Viking mecha is simply because the combat capability of the VF series fighter jets after deformation and landing is too poor. Whether it's mobility, firepower, or defense, it can't compare to land combat tactical mechas that cost only 1/5 or even less of it. Even its designer later admitted that the Viking fighter's deformation design was very unsatisfactory. Mature, but even so, in that era when there was a lack of reliable general-purpose carrier-based mechas, at least 500 Viking fighters were still produced, and laid a solid technical foundation for later variable mechas. Although there are so many shortcomings of Viking fighters, in that era, all those who could fly Viking fighters were the ace pilots in the team. The operation of this type of variable fighter was extremely complicated, and the driving feel was not the same as that of conventional fighters. Totally different, ordinary pilots simply cannot control such advanced weapons. Even if this corpse was once the pilot of a Viking fighter, it is now dead, and what drives it is just a trace of obsession left over from life. It is impossible that even the muscle memory of piloting a fighter jet has been lost. Keep it? We can't let this guy come into contact with the Viking fighter. Ian's heart tightened. He was not worried about the threat that the wreckage would pose to him by driving the Viking fighter, but because the driving engine of the Viking fighter was not common in the future. A crystallization engine, but a small nuclear fission reactor. This small nuclear fission reactor gives the Viking fighter extremely exaggerated endurance, and also gives the Viking fighter pilot a trump card to perish with the enemy. When the fighter plane is seriously damaged and it is confirmed that it cannot leave the battlefield, the division can unlock the reactor limiter through the biological lock and directly transform the fighter plane into a nuclear bomb. This made Kaylan a little cautious. With ZE Logo's protection, he was not worried that the self-explosion of the Viking fighter would hurt him, but now it was too late to inform 33 and Moju. Their location is not far from the hangar. Once the nuclear fission reactor of the Viking fighter is detonated, they will definitely be involved in the nuclear explosion. Even the Shaojiangkai frigate can be sunk by a small tactical nuclear warhead detonated inside the ship, not to mention that the reactor explosion power of a Viking fighter is far greater than that of a small tactical nuclear warhead carried by an individual soldier. However, the distance between the wreckage and Kaylan is now more than 200 meters, which has exceeded the limit of Zilugo's ability. Kaylan has no time to stop the wreckage from getting into the cockpit of the Viking fighter. At this moment, Kaylan suddenly became wise and used the power of space to violently disassemble the cluster laser transmitter hanging under the wing of a nearby fighter plane. With the help of Zilugo, Kaylan repaired it instantly. He obtained the activation device of the laser transmitter and cracked the certification process. He roughly stuffed the 2 energy crystals into the energy conversion device of the laser transmitter. He then carried the laser transmitter like a rocket launcher and buckled it. Trigger. Few things can be faster than light. At the same time as Kaylan activated the laser transmitter, the dazzling beam of light had already hit the cockpit of the Viking fighter, melting 2 pieces directly on the operation panel and driver's seat. A large hole that runs from front to back. The corpse was obviously stunned for a moment, and then roared angrily at Kaylan, but what it responded to was a second cluster laser. The strength of the body of the corroded corpse is indeed amazing. This shot failed to penetrate it, but only burned its chest into a mess. The pungent smell filled the hangar along with the rising white smoke. Come. After firing 2 cannons, the cluster laser launcher was completely scrapped. However, Ian's goal was achieved. He threw down the launcher that was deformed by the high temperature and rushed forward in one stride. Before the person could rush forward, an invisible punch had already fallen on the body of the corpse. This time Kaylan learned his lesson. After knocking the opponent down, he did not use one-way space as before. Instead of pressing it to the ground, he created a 360-degree spatial cage with no dead ends, and locked the corpse inside. To be precise, it cannot be regarded as a cage, but rather a restraint garment. The solid space barrier is close to the corpse's body, as if it has been coated with a stereotyped coating, making it can't even make tiny movements like moving its little finger or blinking. Anyway, the corpse didn't need to breathe, and Kaylan didn't have to worry about suffocating it to death. He directly lifted the sculpture into a corpse with one hand, dragged it to a single rescue cabin, and threw it in. Next, we have to find a way to find Valentina. To be honest, among the few people who have been separated, if they had to rank her with a high probability of reaching the core area, I think she has a very good chance. 89 is at the bottom. Because of her personality, Zilugo asked. Well, her experience and personality make it easy for her to fall into extreme ways of thinking. The end result is to constantly choose solutions with self-destructive tendencies. When she participated in the mecha competition, she often does this, and it can only be said that she is lucky to be alive until now. Although the situation has improved after meeting us, this psychological shadow cannot be eliminated in a day or two. You are actually worried about her, right? Zilugo asked again. Although her tone was always emotionless and unwavering, for some reason, Kaylan smelled a trace of jealousy in it. Smell. This guy seems to have a very strong possessiveness. I don't know where he learned it from. Maybe after returning this time, he should screen the books and movies for her, otherwise he will develop Yandere attributes in the future. But it's troublesome, Kaylan thought in his heart. I'm worried about everyone in the team, Kaylan replied, but my reason tells me that the way I want to find them with the highest success rate is to wait for them in the core area of the Grey Mist Forest, so no matter what I do, I can't show it when I'm anxious. But the situation is different now, Kaylan continued. Judging from the information revealed by this corpse, the thing in the core of the Grey Mist Forest should be the nest it mentioned, but except for these two apart from the words, we know nothing about the hive. Even the files that only members of the undead crew have permission to view have never mentioned this term. If we can get some relevant information before arriving at this hive, then the initiative will be in our own hands. Then how are you going to find Valentina and the blasphemer Mecha? Zilugo asked again. You said it yourself, there is no way you can find them under the interference of the forest, otherwise you would have gone there long ago found. With the help of some tools, Kaylan tapped the floor under his feet a few times with the toe of his boot, for example, this Genoa. What? You want to drive this battleship to find other people? 33 looked at Kaylan and couldn't help but widen his eyes. I don't know if you are crazy or I am crazy. Let's not say whether you can let this battleship fly into the sky. Have you forgotten the reason why this battleship crashed twice? I know. Kaylan nodded, looking indifferent. You know? Then do you have a solution? 33 and Kaylan looked at each other, their tone extremely serious. As a member of the Special Forces who often performs difficult missions, Sanson also knows that in desperate situations, he must resort to strange and dangerous moves to have a chance to survive the difficulties. This is not the first time he has gambled his life, but since it is a gamble, then you have to bet only when there is a possibility of winning, and in his opinion, piloting this battleship is the same as risking death. A complete fleet, thousands of experienced officers and soldiers, all failed here, now with only the wreckage of a battleship that crashed twice and was damaged beyond repair, and a few of them, they want to do what they did before. Is it possible to do something that 1,000 people cannot do? Kaylan and Zilugo's individual combat capabilities are very strong, as if they were cheating. This is true, but no matter how strong their individual combat capabilities are, as long as they are not strong enough to cause a qualitative change, in a large-scale battle it is also difficult to change anything on the battlefield with the power of one person, except for beheading operations. But the problem is that those biological weapons have no leader for Kaylan and others to carry out beheading operations. What controls them is the will of the forest. If you want to behead people, you have to uproot the entire forest. Zilugo's space power is almost invulnerable, but the range she can protect is only 100 meters in radius. If she protects the bridge, she cannot protect the power cabin and engine. If she protects the engine, she cannot protect the bridge, unless she can expand the space barrier to the point of enveloping the entire battleship. Otherwise, manipulating the battleship within the scope of the gray mist forest will be a complete end to itself. If you're asking about those biological weapons, I really can't come up with a good solution right now, Kaylan said honestly. Since you can't come up with a solution, then I think what you said before is all nonsense. 33 frowned. You know better than me. Previously, after you cut off the connection between these two battleships and the gray mist forest, those biological weapons that turned towards the battleship sank the Genoa again in less than 3 minutes. Do you think we can find Valentina in 3 minutes? 33 continued, under the cover of the thick fog and tree canopy, you can't find her even if I give you 30 minutes, let alone 3 minutes. Once you break out of the thick fog, what you have to face is endless biological weapons emerging from the thick fog. Do you think you still have a chance to find someone in that situation? I think you may have misunderstood me. Kaylan smiled. From the beginning to the end, I never said that I wanted to control this battleship to rush above the thick fog. Then you plan to. 33 was stunned, and the corners of his mouth twitched involuntarily, flying in the canopy. Well, the combat records of the Shaojiankai frigate inspired me. If they hadn't been invaded by biological weapons before, they actually had a great chance of reaching the core area of the gray mist forest, of Mist Roost. Although the wood is hard, it is still not enough to constitute an obstacle in front of the steel body of the battleship. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 828. Your plan is crazy. 33 looked at Kaylan with a complicated expression, but I don't know why, but I actually think it seems feasible. I think I must be crazy too. It doesn't seem to be feasible. It is feasible. Kaylan snapped his fingers. It's now time. Even a dead horse can be used as a living horse doctor, not to mention, this horse in front of me, but I haven't breathed my last yet. Then tell me, what do you need me to do? 33 clapped his fist hard. He suddenly felt that all the worries he had just seemed ridiculous. The meaning of his life was to explore those secrets, and now, the truth about this planet was only a dozen kilometers away from them. With tentacles, it is no exaggeration to describe it as end. If he backed down at this time, he felt that he would probably spend the rest of his life regretting it. 33 is very clear that the rest of his life will not be too long. This special ability to manipulate nano-alloy gives him strong combat power, but it also seriously overdraws his body. Instead of spending a period of barely surviving, it would be better to completely ignite the remaining time than to die in pain one day later. Even if it can only turn into ashes, that is still a good ending. But if you are lucky, you may be able to ignite a prairie fire. Vaguely, he could feel that the cold winter that could destroy everything was gradually approaching. Human civilization needed such a fire so much. I need you to go to the power cabin before the thick fog completely submerges it. Kaylan threw a walkie-talkie with an obviously aged plastic shell to 33, this is the Genoa's internal communicator. You need to stick a signal receiver with a magnet anywhere on the inner wall of the battleship where there is an exposed metal structure, and you can establish a simple wired communication circuit. Understood. 33 put the communicator on his shoulder, gave Kaylan an OK gesture, turned around and ran towards the power cabin. What about me? Emoju's voice came out from a set of old-fashioned power armor. Because the microphone was not activated, it sounded very dull. Even if military AI exists, it is still very difficult for one person to control a warship. Kaylan must use all the people who can use it, even if they have never been exposed to this aspect. And Ze Lugo has also been separated from Kaylan. Not only that, she has also split into two clones that look completely different from the original body. According to her own words, controlling the original body and two clones at the same time is enough. This is her current limit, otherwise, she alone would be enough to take over all the work. After Kaylan joined the Undead Crew Club, he read the combat report of the Leviathan attack. The flagship of the First Fleet, the Kylan, dismissed most of the crew before the impact, leaving only the captain of the ship and the first officer. The commander of the fleet and the minimum operating personnel, excluding the pilots who died in the early battles, the total number of people who died in the collision was 47. Even excluding the captain and commander, the minimum number of people to operate a Yao-class aircraft carrier battleship like the Kylan is 45. Of course, the Genoa is just a FEU-class high-speed support ship, and its operational complexity is definitely not comparable to that of a behemoth like the Yao-class aircraft carrier battleship, but just 6 of them want to operate this battleship. It's still a big challenge. Come to the bridge with me, Kaylan said to Emoju. Although the data stored in the central control computer of the Genoa may deepen Emoju's erosion, in this case, Kaylan can only try to minimize Emoju's exposure to some forbidden knowledge. The bridge and power compartment are the two most important parts of an empty ship. They are like the human brain and heart. As for the CIC, although it is equally important, the necessary operators on the bridge cannot be guaranteed. The priority of CIC is not that high. Because many of the operations of CIC can actually be handled by AI, which is very similar to the human body. The brain only needs to be responsible for thinking and issuing instructions. As for controlling every muscle and bone, and even actions such as breathing and heart beating that are carried out all the time can only be left to the brain stem and spinal cord. The reason why the battleship CIC needs to be staffed with enough personnel is because the intelligence of AI is actually far less sophisticated than the human body that has evolved for millions of years, and many operations must be manually analyzed and corrected. But that was in various combat situations where the amount of information was overwhelming. If it was just to simply let the warship fly, the AI of the central control computer would still be fully capable of doing this job. But when Kaylan arrived at the bridge, he found that the airtight door leading to the bridge was locked. The red indicator light on the unlocker is still flashing rhythmically, which means that the airtight door is not stuck due to damage, but someone on the other side of the door started the battleship manually. According to emergency procedures, the airtight door was locked on its own initiative. This emergency procedure is generally activated only when the interior of the battleship is invaded and the bridge control system fails. It is regarded as the last resort for the bridge members to save their lives. After this procedure is activated, not only all cabins leading to the bridge, the doors and pipes will be sealed, and 4 additional half-meter thick alloy partition walls will be lowered behind the doors, turning the entire bridge into an airtight iron barrel. After this program is activated, people in the bridge cannot cancel it. They can only choose to wait inside. There are only 2 results of waiting. One is that the ARC search and rescue team arrives and uses special verification methods open the hatch. The other is for the enemy invading the ship to use rough physical means to forcefully break down the hatch and the separation wall behind the door. When the second situation occurs, the bridge will become the last battlefield for survivors on the battleship. But, if the enemy has the ability to destroy all the hatches and these 4 isolation walls, with the firepower of the self-defense weapons equipped by the bridge members, the outcome of the battle can be imagined. Kaylan is not a professional rescue team. He does not have the special verification method to open the door. As for the authority of his undead crew club, he must contact the battleship's central control computer before it can be activated. Faced with a person who can only read palm prints, and the iris unlocker is of no use at all. Be careful, there may be living people inside. Kaylan protected Emoju behind him, pulled out the engineer shovel inserted into the side of the backpack, flicked it, and unfolded the folded shovel head. Living person? Impossible. Emoju glanced at the unlocker with a flashing red light. Although she didn't know how to operate a battleship, as a former Hell paratrooper, she had spent a lot of time on a battleship. For a period of time. Of course, she could also see that the hatch was locked by a manually activated emergency procedure. When the emergency procedure is activated, the hatch cannot be opened from the inside, even if there were survivors on the bridge at that time. After such a long time, they would have starved to death without supplies. Emoju continued. Do you think that this hatch was locked when the Genoa crashed for the first time? The solemn look on Ian's face did not weaken at all. Otherwise, although Emoju did not agree with Ian's statement, she still picked up her TAC-50 anti-material sniper rifle and pointed the muzzle at the hatch. The set of power armor she was wearing was found by Kaylan in the weapons warehouse of the Genoa. However, those equipped combat models need to be verified before they can be activated. This is the only one Emoju can wear for the hangar. The ground crew used armor for work, and the only weapon she could use was her own big sniper. Zeelugo. Kaylan did not answer Emoju's question directly, but glanced at Zeelugo. The clone on Zeelugo's left-hand side immediately stepped forward and placed its white palm on the hatch that was stained with peeling paint. This hatch fell 25 minutes and 42 seconds ago, Zeelugo said to Kaylan and Emoju expressionlessly. In other words, the manual emergency procedure was activated 25 minutes ago. Kaylan showed a half-smiling expression. Calculating the time, it should be exactly when we broke into the battleship and killed the corroded body. When the corpse was subdued. Obviously, the guy in the bridge saw our strength through the monitoring equipment in the corridor, and he, or it, was scared. Emoju curled his lips and whispered, okay, but even so, I don't think there are living people in the bridge. It would be more accurate to use living monsters to describe them, right? Don't just call others monsters. They are our compatriots, and they were once just like us. Even after the humanity has been eroded, there are still some traces left. The pollution cannot be passed back to the Ark and back to humans. The obsession of the world, he is a respectable soldier. Moreover, we have not been attacked by the ship's defense weapons after entering the battleship, which shows that the other party does not want to harm us. As he spoke, Kaylan glanced at Emoju's forehead, which was covered by the power armor helmet. Even if you really turn into those weird looks, I will still remember what you looked like as a human being. As long as you change from, if you still think you are a human being in your heart, then no one has the right to call you a monster. Are you trying to comfort me? Moju glanced at Kaylan from the corner of his eye, with a complicated look on his face, but his tone was slightly slower. I'm actually trying to comfort myself. Do you believe it? Kaylan smiled and shrugged. Besides, do you think Zelogo is a monster? I just think she looks like a loser. Although Moju has not been in contact with the people of the hunting god hunting group for too long, it is generally accepted in the hunting group that she has successfully assimilated her. Zelogo's abilities have already, it can no longer be described with the word monster. Only cheating players in video games can have similar power. Moreover, it must be the kind of unreasonable and violent hanging. As for perspective, headlocks, etc., those are not qualified. Okay, the chat is over. Kaylan waved the engineer shovel in his hand slightly. Our time is very tight, and I am too lazy to find other ways to enter the bridge. Are you planning to force the door open? As soon as Moju asked, Zelogo's clone's palm pressed against the hatch without any warning. The airtight door made of high-strength alloy seemed to have turned into soft mud, and was suddenly pressed in. Wait a minute. Breaking the door forcefully will trigger the automatic defense device. Moju couldn't help but remind him, back up. There is no bunker here. At the same time as she reminded, dozens of openings had been opened in the ceiling of the corridor. Dozens of fully automatic cannons and laser cutters poked out of these openings. Dozens of red aiming lasers instantly stayed on top of them. On the individual. Moju subconsciously wanted to raise the shield, but the moment she raised her arm, she realized that what she was wearing now was just a piece of work armor without any weapons, and even the armor could not cover the whole body, instead of the armor that was once equipped for hell. The kind of cutting-edge power armor that paratroopers are armed to the teeth with. The anti-material sniper rifle in her hand can destroy a fully automatic cannon, but it cannot resolve the current crisis at all. We don't need bunkers. Kaylan raised his hand, and his movements were as if he was commanding these automatic defense devices. The cannons spit out long tongues of flame at the same time, and dense barrages were directed at them. Pour down. But an invisible umbrella was held above their heads. No matter how fast the bullets rained, they could not break through the barrier formed by this umbrella cover. Don't forget that there are cheaters among us. You just said it yourself. Kaylan turned to Moju and smiled. This thing is much better than an energy shield. The next second, all the fully automatic cannons that were firing were disintegrated, and metal parts of all sizes were scattered everywhere. As for the laser transmitters, their charging devices were destroyed from the beginning. Couldn't get the laser out. Zelogo's clone began to walk forward. Her body seemed slender and weak, but the hatch made of high-strength alloy appeared even weaker in front of her. Moju even had an illusion. She felt that the door, it doesn't look like it's made of alloy, it looks like it's made of chocolate. The process of using a heated metal mold to print patterns on chocolate is exactly the same as this. A petite humanoid passage soon appeared on the hatch. Zelogo waved his hand again, instantly expanding the passage enough for Kaylan and Moju to pass through. P.S. Thanks to book friend 20020627094325997 for the 500 starting coin reward. Thank you dear friend for asking the amount of the 100 starting coin reward. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chen-Mi-san. Chapter 829. However, the moment Zelogo's clone passed through the hatch, the clone could no longer maintain its human body. The body instantly collapsed and returned to a mass of pitch-black liquid material, which quickly retracted into Zelogo's body. What's going on? Kaylan couldn't help but be more vigilant and asked in a lower voice. There is a force field in the bridge that is similar to a dense fog zone. My space power cannot repel this force field, but this force field can block my abilities and perceptions. After the clone enters the force field, the spirit between me and the link will be broken, Ze Luo replied calmly. Then what will happen if your body goes in? Kaylan asked. I will become just like you, Ze Luo replied. What does it mean to become like us? Moju was a little confused. You cannot use space abilities to cause any interference in the surrounding environment, Kaylan explained for Ze Luo. It is equivalent to being forbidden. Although Moju has never played games or watched fantasy novels or anime, she can still understand what Kaylan means by forbidden magic based on the context. What about her physical defense? It may be affected, but it's not certain yet, Ze Luo said. It's possible that I can't even maintain my human form. This force field is different from dense fog, which is pervasive, but as long as all the fog is blocked, the intrusion channel can prevent the spread of fog. However, the effect of the force field will affect every inch of space within the range and cannot be avoided. I feel that this force field is specially designed to target Ze Luo, but it has no impact on us, Kaylan said. The biggest threat to humans is that the gray fog is vision obstructing, toxic, and corrosive, but inside the bridge this mysterious influence does not have these factors. Change the formation. I will take over the vanguard position. Ze Luo will be changed to the rear position, responsible for controlling the corridor outside the bridge. Do not enter the bridge before receiving a signal. But just when Kaylan was about to walk towards the bridge, Moju stopped him. According to the combat operations of the Field Corps, when fighting indoors at close range, priority should be given to armored units to serve as vanguards. If there are no armored units, then light armored units will take their turn, and you should be considered unarmored now. Unit Moju said, although what I have on me is just a set of engineering armor, it is still considered armor. Kaylan glanced at Moju, and then looked up and down at the operational power armor on her body, which only protected the stress-bearing nodes of the limb joints and spine, but even exposed the vital parts of the chest and abdomen, and shook her head. He shook his head and said, there's no need for you. I know you are a high-level enhanced person, but no matter how enhanced you are, your body is still flesh and blood. Moju interrupted Kaylan. Besides, my body is already like this, even if what does it matter if a few more holes are drilled. After saying that, she rushed to Kaylan. However, when passing through the hatch, Moju still put the TAC-50 anti-material sniper rifle, which was more than 1.5 meters long with a muzzle brake, back behind him and pulled out a large weapon hanging from his waist. Caliber short assault rifle. It seems that this guy hasn't forgotten the essentials of CQB combat. After seeing the assault rifle Moju took out, Kaylan immediately took back the second half of his sentence. This is a CQB model, or, in other words, an ARC-03 assault rifle specialized for shipboard operations. Although it is named an assault rifle, it only has semi-automatic and 3-shot modes. The reason is because the recoil of this assault rifle is too much. Even soldiers wearing exoskeletons and power armor may not be able to fully control this gun. Although the ARC-03 assault rifle also belongs to the ARC gun family, it is actually completely different from the most common 0-1 on ARC. This gun actually shoots not rifle bullets, but a special. The power of the explosive bomb even penetrated the thick chitin carapace of the Ultralisk, causing substantial damage to its body. This special bomb actually contains a miniaturized crystal energy bomb. When fired 3 times in a row, the power of the 3 crystal energy bombs can increase each other's strength, triggering a small-scale resonance, multiplying the power of the blast, which is another reason why this bolter doesn't have a full auto mode. The resonance of 3 crystal energy bombs can fully meet the design requirements. If the user shoots out all 12 crystal energy bombs in the magazine at one go, its destructive power can even be greater than that of some light battleships. A hole was made in the outer wall. Kaylan couldn't figure out how this weapon, commonly known as a bolter, was chosen as an in-ship CQB combat weapon. Use this thing to shoot in a small space, let alone the impact on the battleship. No matter what kind of damage it causes, the terrifying range of the bomb alone is enough to scare both the user and the enemy. The only way Kaylan can think of using it is to use solid walls as cover at corners and gatehouses to clear corridors or cabins. As for using this thing to break through, forget it. However, considering the mission that the Genoa is to perform, there seems to be nothing wrong with the ship being equipped with this kind of weapon. Be careful. This thing is more powerful than a grenade launcher. Try to find cover when shooting for safety reasons, Kaylan still warned. He remembered that he had seen a video of a battle to encircle and suppress the secret stronghold of a heretic sect in the archives of the Security Bureau. The field agents in it used the CQB-type bolt gun. 3 consecutive rounds of crystal energy bombs directly destroyed. A container of corrosive seeds was blown to pieces, although it failed to kill the parasitic corrosive seeds. According to subsequent measurements, the physical strength of the container was close to that of a 7th-level enhanced person, but it was not even a piece of diameter. No debris exceeding 5 centimeters was left. This thing is probably the most powerful individual weapon that can be found on this battleship. But Kaylan always felt that Emoju's choice of this weapon may have something to do with the self-destructive tendency in her heart that was caused by the mutation of her body. This situation is different from Valentina's. The latter is dealing with the psychological trauma left by past experiences, while Emoju is completely venting her current desperate situation. She and Kaylan reviewed the recording files on the Shaojiangkai frigate. Of course, she knew very well how long her body could last. With this level of mutation progress, it can take anywhere from half a month to a few days, and she will cross that boundary. Emoju has asked Kaylan more than once that when she is about to turn into a monster, her life must be ended while she still retains human consciousness. This is the same as many people Kaylan knows. Even if death, I also hope to die as a human being, not an indescribable monster. The rigorous training of the Hell paratroopers left her with not only large and small scars, but also an extremely precise muscle memory. After a series of standard search points, Emoju ducked into the first isolation wall. Behind the wall, the muzzle of the bolter was instantly swept through several corners where the enemy might be ambushed. Kaylan, who was following her, immediately took up position after she advanced. Without the help of Shizhan and Ze Logo's abilities, he really couldn't compare to Mo in terms of standard tactical movements. Ju. Clear. Emoju made a gesture to move forward, holding a gun in one hand and holding the wall with the other, walking towards the other side of the separation wall with small but very fast steps. There are a total of 4 isolation walls behind the hatch, but Ze Logo only opened 3 of them. The last remaining wall was within the range of the mysterious force field, and Ze Logo's space power could not use it. Emoju had already moved to the last separation wall at this time. Behind this wall was the bridge of the Genoa. She lifted her helmet visor, pressed her ears to the wall, and held her breath. After a few seconds, she shook her head at Kaylan. There is no sound, at least I can't hear anything. Me too, Kaylan responded. His hearing is a little better than Emoju, but not much better. The person with the strongest hearing in the team should be Asano Akira, but due to the existence of the mysterious force field, even if Asano Akira is here, I'm afraid he won't be able to detect the situation on the other side of the separation wall. You decide the next action plan. Emoju handed over the command to Kaylan. In this regard, she is very similar to Valentina. Both are soldiers at the lowest level, who are good at fighting. But command and dispatch is not their strong point. What other plan can we have? Just force a breakthrough. Kaylan smiled bitterly, shook his head, and attached a suction cup to the isolation wall. What is this? Thermite explosive. Emoju looked at the new gadget Kaylan took out from his backpack with some confusion. I have to remind you that the separation wall is half a meter thick. There is also a cutting compartment inside, and if you want to blow it open, this thermite won't be enough. Who told you this is thermite? Kaylan took out 2 high-grade energy crystals from his pocket and stuffed them into the groove above the suction cup. Stay back, be careful, hot air burns. After saying that, he pressed the groove on the back of the suction cup. A dazzling white light suddenly shot out from the edge of the suction cup, drawing a circle with a diameter of about 2 meters on the isolation wall with the suction cup as the center. In just a few seconds, the temperature in the small space the two of them were in rose to more than 80 degrees Celsius. Emoju could even smell a burst of burning protein coming from the tips of his hair. Stink. This is a laser? But, can a cluster laser generator be so small? Emoju was slightly surprised. You are right to understand it this way, but this thing was originally a small shield generator. The magnetic field used to constrain the shield was compressed from a hemispherical shape into a line, Kaylan said, but it was used by a man named Lighton. The guy changed it into a laser saw, and he compressed the magnetic field used to constrain the shield from a hemispherical shape into a line. After all, the target of our trip was originally a large steel structure building, and we couldn't find it. When you are on the road, you will inevitably need to create your own exit. But I didn't expect it to come in handy at this time. The laser saw did not completely cut through the separation wall, but left the last half a millimeter of margin under Ian's precise control. Are you ready? Kaylan asked Emoju. Yeah, the latter nodded vigorously and picked up the bolt gun. When firing, make sure the bomb's impact point is more than 30 meters away from you, or find a bunker, Kaylan emphasized one last time. Also, try not to destroy the central control computer. I'll count to 3. Wait a minute, Emoju suddenly made a waiting gesture, then took off the anti-equipment sniper hanging on his back and threw it on the ground. Then he disassembled all the engineering pendants and armor plates on the power armor. It came down, leaving only a simple mechanical exoskeleton. Compared with armor, I still believe in my body skills more, Emoju said. I also think that this little piece of iron is just a burden. 3. Emoju's whole body tensed up and he retreated to the third isolation wall. 2. She raised her right leg and pressed the sole of her foot against the wall. 1. Kaylan kicked in front of the fourth isolation wall. The last half millimeter connecting the circular cutting area and the wall was instantly torn apart by this force, and the entire circular cutting area fell forward. At the same time, Emoju's right leg, which was pressed against the third isolation wall, exerted force. With this recoil, her whole body turned into an arrow and rushed forward. The cut-off part of the fourth separation wall hadn't even completely fallen down. She had already passed through the gap, rolled on the spot, and ducked behind a row of railings. It was only then that the round big iron lump with a diameter of 2 meters and a thickness of half a meter hit the ground of the bridge heavily, making a deafening noise. But apart from this loud noise, there was no sound again, no gunshots, no explosions of bombs, and even the sound of the power armor's feet colliding with the metal ground disappeared. What's going on inside? Kaylan asked through the short-range communication equipment. The interference was serious, but if Emoju was not more than 10 meters away from him, he could still barely contact him. Emoju's voice sounded in the earphones, but the voice coming from the ear was clearer and louder. She said, "We were a step too late, they all died." What? Kaylan frowned and rushed in quickly. I saw that countless vines had occupied the bridge, and more than a dozen corroded corpses of various shapes were penetrated by hard and sharp vines, hanging high in the air. Just like the corpses of death row prisoners hung on execution pillars in ancient times to warn the public. P.S. Thanks to Brother Menman for the 36,000 starting coins. Congratulations to Brother Menman for becoming the 10th elderly fan of this book. Thanks to Lu Shui Kutang, Book Friends 20020812184206398, and Su Yang Soyoung for the 500 starting coins. Thanks to the book friend 20200201085940303 rewarded 100 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi San. Chapter 830. How could this happen? Emoju's eyes were widened, and there was surprise on his face that could not be concealed at all. These people, these corpses, they should have been alive not long ago, Kaylan murmured, otherwise, the manual emergency procedure would not have been activated at all. At this moment, there was a sudden slight vibration on the ground of the bridge. Then, the originally dark screens lit up one after another, and several beams of blue light shot down from the center of the ceiling, forming a huge holographic projection screen, with various complex parameters constantly flashing on it. What's going on? Moju took a few steps back in a panic and raised the bolt gun in her hand, but the moment she raised the muzzle of the gun, she hesitated. She didn't find the source of the abnormal movement at all, and she didn't know where the enemy was hiding. Where should she aim her gun? Is it possible to shoot at this holographic projection screen? This battleship has been activated, Kaylan said solemnly, but we did not activate it. But isn't our original purpose to launch this battleship? Moju said with some confusion, since they can launch the battleship, why do they have to seal the bridge? There should be a gap between them and us. Can't they be considered enemies? No, it wasn't them who started the battleship, but these things. Kaylan looked at the vines crawling everywhere in the bridge. These vines not only killed the debris in the bridge, but also kept it extends to the inside of the central control computer. Although Kaylan couldn't figure out how the vines were connected to the central control computer, it was obvious that these strange plants had completed the invasion of both the real and virtual worlds at the same time. Kaylan and the others were still a step slower. The connection between the Genoa and the Grey Mist Forest, which was originally cut off by the blasphemer Mecha, has now been repaired. 33's voice also came from the communicator, with a chaotic sound of electricity. Hello? Hiss, hello. Kaylan. Can you hear my voice? I'm telling you, something seems to be wrong. Hiss, I haven't reached the power cabin yet. Hiss, the main engine of this battleship has started. Hiss, now the entire power cabin is locked. No, I can't get in at all. Hiss, is there something going on your bridge? It won't be clear in the communicator for a while. Don't worry about the power cabin for now. Come to the bridge quickly, Kaylan replied. Hiss, okay, I know. Hiss, I'll be here right away. Hiss, in addition, I also discovered something. Hiss. What's the matter? Kaylan asked. The originally motionless vines in the battleship seem to have come to life. Hiss, I see. Hiss, new shoots are starting to sprout in many places. Hiss, if these fog vines revive. Hiss, the inside of this battleship will probably be filled with thick fog soon. 33 seemed to be running wildly, the solace of his hard rubber boots stepping on the metal corridor floor, and he kept making sounds. A crisp snapping sound. I know, the actual situation is actually worse than you thought, Kaylan said. I suggest you be mentally prepared. Don't worry, I've been through even the worst situations. Although 33 said this, the frequency of his steps suddenly accelerated a lot. Is there any danger over there now? Can you still persist? Not yet. But I think, the situation is a bit beyond our control. Kaylan thought for a while and told 33 the truth through the communicator. The will of the forest has regained control of this battleship. Quan, it is not us who restart the battleship, but the Grey Mist Forest. I've guessed it a long time ago, 33 said. Suddenly there was a burst of intensive machine gun fire from his side. It was obvious that the automatic defense facilities inside the battleship had been activated. Are you okay? It's not a big problem, just a few broken cannons, 33 replied, but I'm afraid I won't be able to communicate with you for the time being. Wait for me, at most, 5 minutes, I'll be there. Before 33 finished speaking, the communication was interrupted. Although the in-ship communicator can use the metal structure inside the battleship to conduct wired communication, this communication has almost no protection means and is easy to be intercepted and interfered. Since the forest will that controls the battleship has discovered 313 also used an automatic cannon to attack it. Naturally, 33 would not let 33 maintain communication with Kaylan and the others through the ship's communicator. Then, what are we going to do now? Moju looked at the bridge with vines everywhere in confusion and asked Kaylan, try to take back control of the battleship from these fog vines. Right. The diameter of the thickest vines in the bridge is almost the same as the trunk of the fog tree at the red line. There are at least 20 giant vines like this. What are separated from the giant vines are sub-level branch vines. Although it is said to be the next level, but it is as thick as a python. The number of vines at this level is already a bit hard to count. What grows from the python level vines is a fog vine that is similar to the thickness of a human arm. This diameter of fog vine is also the most commonly seen in the forest outside. For lumberjacks, this thickness a single strand of fog vine can be cut with a chainsaw equipped with a nano-alloy blade, but if a dozen or even hundreds of strands are entangled together, even heavy machinery will be unable to do anything about it. The casing of the computer room where the central control computer is stored has been pried open by these vines. More than 1,000 fog vines have penetrated through the gaps and are connected to the central control computer in a way that humans cannot understand. Logically speaking, as long as these fog vines are cut off, the connection between them and the battleship's central control computer can be interrupted. However, the consequence of doing so is that there is a high probability that the central control computer of the Genoa will also be destroyed. In this environment where resources are extremely scarce, even if the team of engineers who designed this central control computer are here, they can't guarantee that they can fix it. Not to mention people like Kaylan who know almost nothing about this. Let me give it a try, Kaylan responded, quickly ran to the captain's position, and pulled the operation panel that was tilted to one side. Kaylan first tried to wake up the military AI in the central control computer. Generally speaking, the military AI manufactured by ARC is very sensitive to unrecognized external data intrusions, especially intrusions through physical means like Kiri Tang. Once the AI's self-protection mechanism is triggered, the central control computer will be locked directly. Not to mention starting the engine to make the warship fly, even the lights used for lighting in the bridge will not be turned on. As long as you can get in touch with the AI, it shouldn't be a problem to regain control of the battleship. But Kaylan soon discovered that no matter what he tried, the AI seemed to have been deleted from the system of the central control computer and completely disappeared. This is impossible, deleting the AI. What's the difference between destroying the central control computer? Ian's fingers rose and fell rapidly on the virtual keyboard, but the instructions he entered one after another seemed to be lost in the sea. Get any response? At this time, Moju suddenly said behind Kaylan, I saw that those vines seemed to have destroyed a host just now. What? Kaylan looked up at the computer room under the steps. He saw a few vines as thick as pythons directly wrapped around a data processor with a paint color that was completely different from other machines, just like a real python. Like strangulating prey, the 3-meter-high data processor was crushed into a pile of scrap metal. After entering the Genoa, Kaylan finally couldn't help but uttered his first curse word. This machine is the host of the central control computer AI. These vines, this forest, are you crazy? Is it trying to prevent me from getting in touch with the AI? Although the AI of the central control computer is only an artificial intelligence that exists in the virtual world, it also has an entity in the real world. The data processor that was just crushed by the vines is its entity. The destruction of the host computer is equivalent to directly erasing the AI of the central control computer from the physical level. And judging from the degree of damage to the host computer, even if it can be repaired, the original AI of the Genoa can be resurrected, it is almost impossible. But, without military AI to assist in processing the huge data information collected into the central control computer, it would be impossible for this warship to move. No, that's not right. Kaylan soon realized that he was wrong. The importance of AI is only for humans. But for the Grey Fog Forest, the entire forest has been connected to the battleship and the battleship's central control computer. Although Kaylan doesn't know how the plants are connected to circuit boards, transistors, and silicon wafers. But the fact is right in front of him. Even if he can't understand it, he can only accept the reality. For the Grey Fog Forest, the AI of the central control computer is dispensable. Each fog perch is equivalent to a computer host. Countless fog perches are connected together through the root system, which can provide the forest with the computing power provided may far exceed human imagination. The information that the central control computer of a high-speed support ship Genoa needs to process is probably nothing in the face of this majestic computing power. It is precisely because of this that the Grey Mist Forest has the confidence to directly obliterate the AI of the Genoa. It's over. Without AI, I can't communicate directly with the central control computer. Now I can only hope that the data with control permissions has not been deleted or rewritten. Kaylan entered a few new instructions, opened the backend of the central control computer through the captain's exclusive terminal, and then entered his biometric data. The data cannot be identified. No matching sample was found in the database. Your current permissions are unauthorized visitors. If you do not exit the background program within 15 seconds, you will be automatically identified as an intruder. The border of the screen has lit up with a dazzling red light symbolizing warning, and an eye-catching countdown has also appeared in the center of the screen. 15, 14. It seems that what I was most worried about has happened. Sure enough, you shouldn't have any hope. The greater the hope, the greater the disappointment. You should imagine things as the worst-case scenario from the beginning. Kaylan was muttering to himself. He never stopped holding his hand. He took out a large number of labeled memory cards and chips from a small bag close to his body, as well as many that looked like they had a strong smell. Gadget in official colors. Since conventional means won't work, unconventional means must be used. I didn't expect that in the Grey Mist Forest, my hacking skills could actually come in handy. Kaylan used an engineer shovel to pry open the cover under the operation panel, and removed several wires connected to the electrode pads from those small devices. He pulled it out and attached it to several contacts on the circuit board under the operation panel. 19. Immediately afterwards, Kaylan inserted the chips, which were no more than the size of a fingernail, into the reserved slots on these small devices in a certain order. 8, 7. The countdown suddenly got stuck when it counted to 7. After a brief pause, the piercing alarm suddenly sounded. Illegal intrusion detected. Illegal intrusion detected. Emergency measures will be taken. What's going on? Did you mess up? Emoju, who was standing guard behind Kaylan, asked nervously. Isn't there still 7 seconds left in the countdown? Why did he immediately become an intruder? It's not messed up, because what I'm doing now is the intruder, Kaylan said without raising his head. It's just that this machine is a bit stupid. If only it could react so quickly when those vines invaded it. Can you handle it then? I'm trying. I can't guarantee whether it will work or not. I can only say that I will try my best, Kaylan replied quickly. You just need to help me watch my back. Since the system has detected an intruder, then there will definitely be corresponding countermeasures. The firewalls of the central control computer have all been activated. While blocking me, these firewalls will also delay the restart of the battleship, buying us more time. The only thing we need to worry about is the system. Physical measures may be taken to deal with my intruder. Physical means, Emoju was stunned for a moment. Just like those automatic defense cannons in the corridor, as long as the invaders can be blown to pieces, wouldn't the matter be solved? Kaylan said. Keep an eye on the surroundings. Now you don't have to worry about damaging the ship's hull. As long as any weapon comes out, just blast it. Oh, okay, I get it. Emoju just raised his head, and before he had time to look around the bridge, he discovered that the corpses that were strung up in the air by vines and should have been completely dead suddenly started to struggle violently at this moment. P.S. Thanks to Lunuet for the 10,000 starting coins, this book owner club has added another person thanks to Soyoung for the 1,500 starting coins, to Fengmeng for the 1,000 starting coins, to Jigzun for the 200 starting coins. Alien Relic Hunter author, and Chenmi San. Chapter 831. They are alive again, Moju exclaimed. Now, we should call them. Kailan corrected, although there is no difference in the pronunciation of the two words in Chinese. Should I fire on them? Well, help me stop them before I finish my homework. Kailan nodded. What did you say? Moju glanced at Kailan, who was still busy in disbelief. The number of wrecks in the bridge was in double digits, and she was asked to stop so many wrecks by herself. In her opinion, this request was somewhat too much. Don't worry, not every corpse is as strong as the ones 33 encountered. For example, Hruni has basically no fighting power. Besides, I'm not asking you to kill them. As long as you can help me win a few, it only takes a few minutes, Kailan said. But these, corroded skeletons. Moju paused for half a second before saying the unfamiliar and somewhat difficult to pronounce term corroded skeletons. They look very different. As she said, most of the corpses in the bridge are covered with hard cuticles and sharp bone spikes, and some are covered with powerful tentacles, plus with divine armor wrapped around their bodies like power armor. It is no exaggeration to describe them as both offensive and defensive. These guys were obviously mutated specifically for fighting, or rather, transformed into the state. In the midst of his busy schedule, Kailan raised his head and glanced at the corpses that had landed on the ground, and said, "They have all become combat specialized types. It seems that the situation is getting more and more difficult. Compared with when the two of them entered the bridge just now, the shape of these corpses has undergone tremendous changes, but it is not known whether it was the grey mist forest or him that caused the changes in the corpses. If it is the latter, it means that he is probably watching this place. Even if it is just a ray of light from one of his countless sights, the development of the incident will be a big surprise to Kailan and the others. It would be disastrous. But considering that his gaze will cause all creatures that receive the gaze to be extremely severely corroded, and Moju's mutated symptoms have not shown signs of getting worse for the time being, Kailan feels that the latter possibility should be very likely. Small. It's just, can the grey mist forest alone change the shape of the corpse? If you just put a few pieces of outer armor on these corpses through vines, that would make sense, but it would be a bit unreasonable to allow these dead corpses to mutate twice. The reason why these eroded remains mutated from humans into this appearance is because they accepted too much forbidden knowledge, which caused their own erosion level to exceed the critical value. If the grey mist forest can be said to be super eroded on the basis of prompting the second mutation of the corroded corpse, does that mean that the grey mist forest can also use this method to make a normal person's corroded degree instantly exceed the critical value? To use an analogy, it is like forcing the head down to force those forbidden knowledge into people's heads, even if the person being indoctrinated takes the initiative to close their senses and does not see, hear, or perceive everything around them. Erosion levels will also soar uncontrollably. But it doesn't seem to make sense. If the grey mist forest really had this ability, everyone in the entire exploration team, except Kailan, would have been turned into corpses long ago. The will of the forest has wanted to kill these people more than once. If it really has this method, there is no reason not to use it. From this point of view, either I understood it wrong from the beginning, or there are various conditions and restrictions that cannot directly affect living people like them. Kailan divided his brain into two parts. One part desperately invaded the operating system of the central control computer of the Genoa, and the other part frantically thought about the reasons for the secondary mutation of these corpses. Behind him, Moju he had already started fighting with a few corpses that were the first to break free from the shackles of the vines. The target of these eroded corpses was very clear. They rushed in the direction of Kaylan as soon as they landed. Moju did not hesitate to switch the bolt gun to 3-shot burst mode and then pulled the trigger. 3 crystal energy explosive bombs the size of a baby's fist came out of the gun and landed among the corpses in the blink of an eye. The deafening explosion suddenly resounded throughout the entire bridge. The explosive power of the resonance of the 3 crystal energy bombs should not be underestimated. The corpses were directly thrown away by the terrifying air waves and hit the wall in the distance, or to put it another way, embedded within the walls. Although these corpses looked very embarrassed, Moju could see that they had not suffered any substantial damage at all. The 3 crystal energy bombs could not even tear apart the vine armor on their bodies. The reason why these corpses were blown away was simply because the ground their limbs were clinging to was torn apart. Otherwise, they could have remained motionless in the explosion, or even continued to charge forward. Even crystal energy bombs can't cause damage. Moju's heart sank, but the current situation didn't leave her much room to think, so she could only choose to continue firing. Anyway, as long as we can hold these guys back, Kaylan and the others should have a way to deal with these monsters, right? Even Moju herself didn't notice that she now trusts Kaylan and the others. The level is now the same as that of her teammates who have been with her for many years. Compared with the mutual suspicion attitude when she first entered the forest, she can now trust them with her back. But the current situation was just the other way around. It was Kaylan who handed his back to her. 3 more corpses broke free from the vines that penetrated their bodies, fell to the ground, and rushed over from Moju's right side, forming a 2-sided trap with the corpses on the left that had been blown away before and now came back. Moju suddenly felt a great deal of pressure. "How long do you want? I feel like I can't stop them for much longer," Moju roared. She turned the muzzle of the bolter and fired 3 crystal energy bombs in each direction. The shock wave generated by the explosion of crystal energy bombs can indeed suppress the erosion to a certain extent, but the premise is that the continuous firepower cannot be interrupted, and now only the last of the 12 crystal energy bombs of the bolt gun in Moju's hand are left. 3 rounds, and only less than half a minute passed. Moju's bolter was picked up from the ground, and there were no supplies such as spare magazines. Weapons and ammunition of this level were locked in high-authority weapon boxes, and they could not be connected before gaining control of the battleship. Kaylan couldn't even open these weapon boxes. Zelugo was able to use his space ability to pry the lock of the weapon box without triggering the self-destruction device of the weapon box, but before that, Kaylan never thought that explosive bombs would be used in the future. When it comes to things like guns, even the shooter originally equipped with a bolt gun on the Genoa ship rarely carries a spare magazine. Generally speaking, only 1 to 3 crystal energy bolt rounds are needed to solve the problem, and if 2 crystal energy bombs can't solve the problem, then 12 more shots will often be of no avail. "I'm out of ammunition," Moju said to Kaylan after firing the last 3 crystal energy bombs. "Give me another 3 minutes." Ian's fingers typing on the keyboard had even left an after image. Fortunately, he was using a highly sensitive military-grade virtual keyboard. If it were replaced with a civilian-grade mechanical keyboard, I'm afraid it wouldn't even work. He couldn't keep up with it at a third of the speed he was typing. "But I have no ammunition," Moju emphasized again. She was really out of ammunition now. Not only had all the crystal energy bombs been used up, but also her own TAC-50 anti-material sniper rifle. It was also thrown away, and the only firearm left on his body was a large caliber pistol at his waist for self-defense, but this thing could not even hurt the corpses, and it could not even hinder their movements. 2 minutes, Kaylan shouted through gritted teeth. Although the Vines used physical hacking to gain control of the central control computer, they obviously didn't know how to set up defensive measures to deal with Ian's attack. It's still just that the central control computer of the Genoa originally had those security measures. There are a total of 6 firewalls, and Kaylan has broken through 4. Almost 70% of the computer viruses he wrote himself have been uploaded. The entire central control computer's defense line is in a precarious situation. The dawn of victory is just around the corner. Kaylan can't stop now. While cracking the firewall, he must constantly modify the code of the virus program so that the central control computer cannot recognize the virus program. Once he stops, the virus that stops mutating will be safe. The program is locked, followed by isolation and deletion. Then all his efforts just now will be in vain, and the difficulty of the next invasion will increase exponentially. The last firewall is left, Kaylan growled. Although the temperature inside the bridge was now close to zero, the huge beads of sweat on his forehead were still seeping out, dripping along his cheeks and chin and falling to the ground. The sound of click, click, click is clearly audible. Emoju turned her head and glanced at Kaylan. When she turned back, the nearest corpse had already rushed forward. The other party raised two arms covered with bone spikes and beat her down hard. Aha! Emoju let out a low roar. The only four propellers of the set of operational power armor were all released from the restriction valves in an instant, soaring into an overload state. The tail flames ejected suddenly changed to the original ones. More than twice as much, and with the blessing of this explosive force, Emoju crashed into the arms of this corpse. She placed the arm armor of her left hand at the front. This is the part of the set of power armor with the highest nano-alloy content except the spine and feet. It has a strength comparable to the front armor of a tank, even with the bone spurs on the corpse. It won't be able to pierce the arm armor for a while. Emoju's right hand pulled out the large caliber pistol from his waist, put the muzzle of the gun against the corpse's chest, and pulled the trigger repeatedly at zero distance. The terrifying recoil continued to come from the handle, although the power was the armor could offset this backward momentum, but the palm that was in direct contact with the pistol grip was completely numb from the shock, and blood flowed everywhere from the torn tiger's mouth. Emoju could feel that the bullet she fired successfully penetrated into the chest of the corpse, and the power coming from the left arm was obviously weakened, which made her feel happy. These monsters, it seems that they are not invincible. But the next second, there was a burning pain in her back. The arms of this eroded skeleton were folded at an angle completely opposite to the human joint structure, and bone spurs more than 10 centimeters long clung to the Emoju's back was plowed, and the places that were not protected by the power armor were instantly torn open. In some places with deep wounds, even the white bones could be seen. Emoju felt as if blood was pouring into her trachea, which made her cough violently. But as soon as she coughed, the situation immediately became worse. The cough opened the closed wound, causing more wounds to open. Too much blood poured into the respiratory tract. At the same time, the dizziness caused by lack of oxygen continued to hit her brain. She couldn't help but staggered, and was immediately crushed to the ground by the corroded corpse in front of her. She felt like she would faint at any time, but her survival instinct was forcing Emoju's brain to stay awake. At this critical moment, she first locked the movable joints of the power armor and turned it into a hard metal frame. Then opened the quick-release lock on the side of the armor, turned over, and rolled out of the frame of the power armor. A very beautiful move. Golden Cicada escapes, but Emoju has no time to appreciate her own operation at this moment. Blood is constantly pouring out of her nostrils and mouth. If her judgment is not wrong, the lungs have been punctured. This kind of injury is fatal. If you want to survive, you must be sent to the medical warehouse for treatment immediately. But here, the only place with a medical warehouse is the ship's infirmary. But if you want to open the door of the infirmary, activate the medical warehouse and a series of supporting medical equipment, you must first take back control of the battleship from the hands of the Grey Fog Forest. Right. After going around half a circle, I finally returned to the starting point. Emoju didn't ask Kaylan how long it would take. She was speechless. Foamy blood continued to overflow from the corners of her mouth. She stumbled back a few steps, leaned against a railing with her back, and stretched out her hand. into the first aid bag on his waist. She didn't bother to see what she felt. Anyway, as long as her finger touched a syringe, she took it out and pricked herself. After 5 or 6 injections, she finally felt a strong force coming from her heart. It burst out and made Emoju, who was already in a dying state, wake up again. She didn't know if the medicine was taking effect or if her body was returning to the light, but no matter what, her already tattered body seemed to be recovering quickly, and she could even feel granulation growing rapidly from the wound. "Come out and fill in those missing places." Vaguely, she seemed to hear a voice whispering in her ear. This language was completely incomprehensible to her, but she could feel a very familiar breath. "You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Alien Relic Hunter. Author, Chenmi-san. Chapter 832. What's going on? What has happened to my body? Emoju felt that his thinking ability seemed to have stagnated for a moment. It seemed like a moment, and it seemed like a long time passed. In her field of vision, everything around her became extremely slow. Just when she was so surprised that she wanted to call Kaylan, a vague line of sight traveled through countless spaces and times and was projected on her. Of body and soul. The pain, like being struck by lightning, suddenly woke Emoju out of her trance. She suddenly discovered that she could actually hear the sounds emitted by the corpses in front of her. Not only could she hear them, but she can also understand the meaning of those meaningless babbles. "Stop them, don't let the intruders disturb the great god's sacrificial ceremony, stop them." Although the lips of these eroded skeletons have not moved from beginning to end, they are constantly repeating this sentence. What's stopping it? What ritual? Before Emoju's brain could react, a pair of sharp claws had already pierced her chest, tearing her entire chest apart. This was an injury that could kill someone in an instant, but Emoju didn't feel any impact on her body except for the pain. Even under her subconscious counterattack, the pair of thorns that pierced her chest, the sharp claws, were all broken off. "This is my power." Emoju was shocked by his own actions. The sharp claws that had just been unharmed by the resonance of 3 crystal energy bombs were now broken by his own hands. "Have I turned into that kind of monster?" Emoju couldn't help but froze on the spot. She lowered her head in disbelief and looked at the wound on her chest. The wound has disappeared, and even the scar has completely disappeared, but the originally wheat-colored skin has shown a strange red color, as if burning magma is flowing under the skin. No, although she had been mentally prepared for a long time, when this moment really came, Emoju still couldn't accept the reality. She hugged her head, knelt down on the ground with a pop, and shook her head desperately. "Head. Don't, I don't want to become a monster." 2 corpses rushed forward. One of them strung up Emoju's body with an arm that had been transformed into a bone blade. The other corpse had hundreds of empty tube structure tentacles shot out from its body, stabbing into the body. He entered her body and sucked her flesh and blood crazily. The huge pain caused by the body tissue being crushed and sucked suddenly drowned out Emoju's last shred of reason. The strange redness instantly spread all over her body, and countless red spikes shot out from every corner of her body. When she came out, she, who could still maintain her human form, turned into a huge crimson sea urchin in the blink of an eye. The 2 corpses that were attacking her were suddenly smashed into sieves by these spikes. This time, the roles of the absorber and the one being absorbed were completely reversed, and the 2 corpses moved in just a short time. It shriveled up in a second, leaving only a layer of hard skin wrapped around the skeleton, while the spikes on the sea urchin transformed by Emoju became increasingly bright red and gorgeous. Hundreds of tentacles extended out from the gaps between the spikes, sweeping towards everything that moved in the bridge except Kaylan. Every time these tentacles grab a corpse, they will drag it close to the sea urchin and use those spikes to penetrate and absorb it. Even 33, who had just arrived at the bridge, was almost swept away by several tentacles attacking him. Fortunately, he blocked it for a moment with a flying blade, then quickly withdrew and retreated a dozen steps, returning to the ship in one breath. Outside the bridge, it was ZE Logo's space shield that separated the pursuing tentacles. Otherwise, he might have become a man by now. What is this? 33 stared at the tentacles that retreated angrily in shock, and asked ZE Logo, where are Kaylan and Emoju? Are they still inside? Yeah, ZE Logo nodded, then stepped forward. Wait, 33 wanted to reach out to pull ZE Logo, but found a soft space barrier blocking his movement. Kaylan sent me a text message at the last moment before the communication was cut off. He said that there is something in the bridge that can stop you, so you can't enter the bridge, and you can't use your power to interfere with it, so it will be a hard battle. If you go in now, is it okay? Just now, that force field disappeared. After ZE Logo finished speaking, he stepped over the frame of the airtight door. With ZE Logo leading the way, 33 was no longer afraid of the tentacles that almost caught him just now. He took a deep breath and followed immediately. The two of them bypassed the separation walls and walked to the open area. 33 were immediately startled by the scene in front of them. Then, what is that big thorn ball? Those eroded corpses all around. Were they all killed by it? Why didn't it attack Kaylan? She is Emoju, ZE Logo said softly. Emoju, 33 was stunned for a moment, and then quickly reacted. Her erosion level has exceeded the critical value. Is this her corrosion state? ZE Logo nodded. Emoju's incarnation of corruption has very strong combat power. Even when faced with enemies more than 10 times his own in the bridge, it was able to completely crush it. Perhaps crushing is used to describe the strength gap between the two sides. Not very accurate. This was a complete instant kill. From the time those tentacles stretched out from between the spikes to the last corpse being dragged back and sucked dry, the entire battle only lasted 10 seconds. Kaylan also finally succeeded in breaking through the firewall of the central control computer and regained control of the battleship by relying on the virus implanted in it. The energy shield instantly unfolded and burned away the vines wrapped around the Genoa ship. Clean and tidy. A dilemma that was almost unsolvable has been solved in the blink of an eye. But neither Kaylan nor 33 were happy at all at this time. Although ZE Logo didn't show any emotion, she just kept staring at the sea urchin transformed by Emoju with vigilance. However, she did not take action directly, and she did not even impose any restrictions on Emoju under normal circumstances. Body. Everyone was silent, no one made a sound. After about 10 seconds, those bright red spikes slowly shrank inwards, the huge red sea urchin disappeared, leaving only a woman covered in blood and whose skin was cut into pieces standing there. All the spikes with a length of more than 10 meters were retracted into this body, which was only about 1.7 meters tall and even looked a little thin. From Ian's perspective, it didn't look like these sharp spikes had been retracted. Ju's body seemed to be melted into her flesh and blood. The gap left by the sharp thorns on the skin healed in the blink of an eye. Even the tiny tentacles that originally grew on Emoju's head have retracted under the skin. Now she looks like a completely normal human being. There is no difference. But everyone present knew that she would never be able to return to the way she was before entering the forest. Emoju turned her head with some difficulty and looked at Kaylan. Her turbid eyes were bloodshot, and her pupils were already showing signs of dilation. She could no longer see anything at the moment, she was just looking for her memory. Looking at Ian's position. I'm here, Kaylan said, but Emoju's expression did not change at all. Not only has she lost her vision, but her hearing has also been taken away. Emoju's terrifying power did not come for free. Kaylan knew the rules of his very well. Since he wanted power, he had to exchange it with corresponding things, Anything that could be used in the concept of his anything that can be used as a bargaining chip can be exchanged, whether life, body, soul, or emotions, memories, etc. And what Emoju uses as a bargaining chip is her senses. When she was picked up by the bone blade, the unbearable pain destroyed her consciousness. Her last remaining trace of clarity was to block all the senses in her body. Perhaps this was also a trace of mercy from him. Will he have mercy on humans, creatures that are like insects to him? Maybe. When a person sees a dying insect struggling in pain, he may choose to help it out. This person probably has no good intentions, nor does he think about the life, death, and pain of the insect. Maybe he immediately forgot about this random act after doing it, but no matter what, from the perspective of a bug, this can indeed be regarded as a kind of mercy. I'm here. Kaylan stepped forward and reached out to hold Emoju's shoulder. He was not worried that Emoju would attack him, and the sense of crisis in his subconscious did not appear. Although Emoju lost all her senses, she could still detect someone holding her shoulders. There was a look of relief on her face, and her lips moved slightly. She was speechless, and Kaylan didn't read her mouth movements, but Kaylan knew what she wanted to say to herself. I know. Kaylan nodded, took out the pistol from his waist, and put the muzzle of the gun against Emoju's head. Good night, have a sweet dream, Kaylan said silently, and then pulled the trigger. Sudden gunshots rang out in the silent bridge, and a bloody hole the size of a fist appeared on the back of Emoju's head. She fell straight backwards, and her lifeless body fell to the ground and exploded into a ball. The blood mist quickly evaporated and disappeared. You can't even keep the body. 33 murmured, that's good, at least it's clean. She gave up that power on her own in the end. Her obsession was different from other corpses. She wanted to embrace death as a human being, so she finally changed back to her original form. Logo said expressionlessly, she got her wish. Embracing death as a human being, 33 glanced at Sanwoo girl in surprise. Did you learn this rhetoric from some literary book? It sounds quite tragic. No, this is what I read before her last ray of consciousness died, Logo replied. 33 rubbed the bridge of his nose vigorously, suppressing a certain sore feeling. If I have this day, I hope you can do this little favor for me. Your mood swings are obvious. Logo looked at 33 with some confusion. I can feel the sadness in your mood. Did you see it, or did you use your special ability? 33 rubbed his face, raised his wrist, and looked at his expression through the reflection of the watch mirror. His eyes were not red, and there were no obvious changes in his facial features. But for some reason, looking at his face, 33 always felt depressed. He tried to smile, but found that smiling was uglier than crying. I can feel human emotions within a certain range, Logo said. Although there are many conditions for directly reading human thoughts, it is still very easy if you just feel the changes in emotions. After hearing Logo's words, 33 subconsciously took a few steps back and distanced himself from the Sanwoo girl. To be honest, this ability makes me feel a little uncomfortable. Don't look at me like that. Although I have experienced a lot of life and death and am relatively open-minded, it does not mean that I am a hard-hearted person. Because Emoju is your kind, did her death arouse your empathy and make you feel sad? Logo asked. I'm sorry, my expression may be a bit blunt, but my understanding of human beings' emotional changes, I've always been interested in them. I thought, if I could figure out the mysteries of them, maybe I could become exactly like a human being. You can't say that. I actually don't know how to answer your question, but I always feel that your statement just now is not quite right. 33 scratched the back of his head. Have you never had this before? Does it feel like this? Logo nodded, then shook his head. I don't know, but when Kaylan killed Emoju just now, I had an urge to stop him. But, Logo continued, I know that this impulse was wrong, and it was not that strong, so it disappeared quickly. This shows that you are becoming more and more human, in every sense, Kaylan said, walking towards the two of them. How is the situation now? 33 changed the topic and asked. Too bad, at least the Genoa is useless. Kaylan showed a helpless smile. Even if the vines used to repair the ship's hull were not burned by the energy shield, a ship that has lost its AI to us, a battleship, is no different than a big pile of scrap metal. That's really bad. No, I should say it's simply terrible. 33 shrugged. Without the battleship, then your original crazy plan would have no chance of being implemented. 33 was halfway through talking when he suddenly paused. Wait a minute, we have another battleship. P.S. Thanks to Sci-Fi for the 100 starting coins. To be honest, when I was coding this chapter today, when Kaylan repeated "I'm here to emoju" twice, the Japanese dubbing automatically came to my mind. Knock, click, oh, lewa, click, click, it's over. Could it be that I am a rare person? Small. Hard. 2. Second rate. UN. Alien Relic Hunter. Author, and Chenmi-san. Chapter 833. Our time is still very tight. Kaylan nodded to 33, now the connection between the Xiaojiangkai and the forest has most likely been restored. I feel like we are being led by this forest, this feeling is too uncomfortable. 33 frowned. If this continues, we will always be one step behind it. But complaints are complaints, and the three of them could only rush towards the crash site of the Xiaojiangkai frigate non-stop. Unfortunately, by the time they arrived, the AI host of the Xiaojiangkai frigate had also been given to Kirito. Destroyed. Without AI assistance, even if the remaining functions of the entire battleship were intact, they would not be able to start it. Even if they could barely get the main engine to start, it would be impossible to coordinate the tens of thousands of controls on the entire battleship with manual operation alone. Balance between devices. This is different from driving. When driving, you only need to take care of the steering wheel, brakes and accelerator. For manual transmission cars, you only need to add a clutch. But a big thing like a battleship must adopt fully intelligent operation because of its high complexity. Once the intelligent program crashes, it means the failure of the entire operating system. It is precisely for this reason that in this era of highly developed intelligent control technology, the proportion of fully autonomous vehicles on the Ark still does not exceed 50%, not only due to the consideration of the vehicle's operating feel, but also most of it is because car buyers do not trust fully autonomous driving systems. This is a shortcut, but when something goes wrong with this shortcut, those who choose the shortcut may have to spend twice as much time and energy to reach the destination as those who take the main road. It's good to be able to reach the end. Some people may be trapped forever on this shortcut that can no longer be called a shortcut. Try to see if you can fly the fighter jet in the hangar, 33 suggested. That thing is fully manual, so it should be fine. But Kaylan shook his head. The fighter jet can be flown, but the structure of the fighter jet itself is too fragile. If it flies within the canopy, it is almost the same as suicide. Moreover, the target of the fighter jet is too small, and it is difficult for Valentine to fly. NA or others have noticed that even if we pass by them, we may miss each other. 33 couldn't help but fell into silence. The reason why Kaylan decided to look for other people lost in the forest in the first place was because the battleship itself was large enough and eye-catching, and it could make a wide range of noise even in the thick fog. This is like finding a needle in a haystack. There is a big difference between fishing by hand and fishing with a high-power electromagnet. You are right, we can no longer be led by this forest, otherwise we will always slow it down. Kaylan said, abandon the original plan and head directly to the core area. Alas, 33 sighed. That's what you say, but how do you find the direction to the core of the forest? There is thick fog everywhere outside. As long as we leave the blank area created by ZE Logo, you can't even tell the difference between east, west, and north. By the way, did you find any clues in the central control computer of the Xiaojiang reform? No. Kaylan still shook his head. Rooney was worried that latecomers would be contaminated by the forbidden knowledge, so he deleted all the data involving key information, only leaving some less important things. Although by piecing together here and there, we can guess part of what happened to them that year, but there is no information about the core area of the forest. But even so, Moju was still eroded, and the danger of that information was evident. I guess just hearing a few words about the place is enough to turn someone into a monster, but we still have to go to that place. It's really like the old man hanged himself, it's so boring, 33 complained. We only know a little bit of information about the core area of the forest, or rather, 2 words, hive. This was obtained from the mouth of the corpse you encountered, Kaylan said. If we analyze it literally, the meaning of hive, a nest? A city? Is the grey mist forest a monster's nest? Or is it a city composed of a large number of nests? No matter how you explain it, but it feels like something is wrong, 33 muttered. Is there a possibility that this word comes from the language of Alpha civilization? Kaylan put forward a hypothesis, because the skeleton communicated with us in Chinese, not Alpha language, so he mentioned hive is probably a foreign word transformed from its original meaning in the Alpha language, rather than a literal translation, and it may not even be a free translation. Then don't you speak the language of Alpha civilization? In their language, what does the word hive mean? 33 asked immediately. City, city. Kaylan tried to translate this Chinese word into the pronunciation of Alpha civilization and read it, but no corresponding memory fragments emerged in his mind. Kaylan shook his head and said, the language of Alpha civilization does have corresponding combinations of characters and syllables, but I can't understand the meaning of this word at all. How could this happen? Doesn't it mean that the language of Alpha civilization can directly communicate at the conscious level? You can read this word, so why can't you understand its meaning? 33 asked in confusion. How to put it, it's like the name of a certain city in China in the old era. A foreigner who is proficient in Chinese but has never been to China. After he comes into contact with the name of the city, he can understand every word in the name. The words can also be read with standard pronunciation, but if you don't tell him that the name represents a city, then he will be completely unaware of the meaning behind these characters. Although the language logic of Alpha civilization it is very different from human language, but this point is consistent. Hive, this is a noun that refers to a specific thing, but before I saw this thing with my own eyes, I was completely in a without knowing anything. It is impossible to obtain more information through the term itself, Kaylan explained helplessly. Let's not talk about this for now. You should still think about how to get to the core of the forest, 33 said. At this time, the 3 of them had already walked out of the wreckage of the Shaojiankai frigate and came to the open space outside. However, in places that were not separated by space barriers, all they could see was a thick gray fog as thick as substance. Like an ocean filled with gray ink. Find someone to lead the way, Kaylan said. Looking for someone? Who are you looking for? 33 was stunned for a moment, then looked at the single rescue cabin standing next to Kaylan, and couldn't help but opened his mouth slightly. The person you said is leading the way, could it be, this guy? Well, that's right. Kaylan pushed open the door of the rescue cabin, took out the remains that were still bound by the space barrier, and placed them on the ground. Think about it, assuming he has regained freedom of movement now. With his ability, where will he escape? Genoa? No, the wreckage of that battleship can't stop Unze Luo at all, and all his companions on the bridge have been killed by Moju. As for the others in the forest, there is no place to provide him with shelter, so there is only one place. 33's eyes lit up, and his tone became a little excited, the core area of the grey mist forest. He has a lot of there is a high probability that he will run in this direction. His primary purpose is very clear, which is to keep us in this place forever. But he obviously cannot do this with his own strength. So, leading us into the core of the grey mist forest is the only way to achieve this purpose. Therefore, even if he knew that the purpose of us letting him go was to use him to lead the way, he would still take us to the core area, to the most dangerous place in the entire forest. This is a conspiracy. Kaylan turned to Ze-Logo and said, "Let him go." The space force that suppressed the corpse so that it could not move suddenly disappeared. The corpse that had been lying on the ground suddenly jumped up and ran wildly in one direction on all fours. "Get in the car and chase," Kaylan said. 33 finally understood why Kaylan dragged a Bobcat X6 all-terrain assault vehicle from the vehicle library when he got off the Xiaojiankai frigate. This all-terrain assault vehicle was originally equipped for the Marines on the ship, but during the entire combat process, except for intra-ship combat, there was no opportunity for the Marines to play, so the vehicle could only be stored in the vehicle library and collect dust. Thankfully, this thing that has been parked for more than 10 years can still be started. 33 jumped onto the back seat of the assault vehicle and reached out to grab the steel frame of the roof. It was scrapped a long time ago, but Ze-Logo repaired it again. It took us several hours to remove rust, clean dust, and replace aging parts. For her, it only takes minutes. Kaylan, who was sitting in the driver's seat, said without looking back. He stepped on the accelerator, and the all-terrain assault vehicle immediately jumped out from the spot, chasing closely behind the wreckage. This girl's abilities are so perverted, 33 couldn't help but sigh. Although his ability to manipulate nanoalloy is somewhat similar, he has no way to deal with things that are not made of nanoalloy. The difference is more than 1 or 2 points. "Be careful, this road is not easy to drive," Kaylan said. "This area is right next to the site where the Xiaojiankai frigate crashed for the second time. The entire ground was turned over as if it had been plowed. The four wheels of this assault vehicle had a pitiful amount of time to touch the ground at the same time. Rather than driving on the ground, it would be more appropriate to say that it is jumping close to the ground. It's no wonder that many games with this type of vehicle call this type of vehicle a bouncer. Fortunately, the shock absorption performance of this Lynx X6 all-terrain assault vehicle is very superior. Not only is the suspension system equipped with long-distance shock absorber springs, but it also uses a magnetic levitation cockpit that is rare on ground vehicles. With Logo's assistance, Ian's experience sitting in the driver's seat was no different from driving Miss Soma's luxury hovercar on a flat road. But 33, who was lying in the back seat, felt a little uncomfortable. Although he was not shaken to pieces, you could feel what he was feeling at this time from his pale face. 33 finally understood that Ian's words of "hold on tight" were only for him. As for Ze-Logo, this floating was above the roof of the car, with his feet and the frame of the car always maintaining 10 centimeters. The Sanwoo girl who has never changed the distance will definitely not feel the bumps. Ze-Logo's space power was also exerted on 33, but most of her power was used to isolate the fog and track the corpses. The remaining power was used to stabilize herself and Ian's bodies. As for the part of the power that can be left to 33, it is really pitiful. It was just enough to keep 33 from knocking the compressed dry food he had eaten not long ago out of his stomach. The Lynx series of all-terrain assault vehicles are still in service in the Arc Field Corps. Although the latest model has been released as the Z7 Plus, X6 like this one can still be seen in many camps of rapid reaction forces. Except apart from its relatively weak armor, this vehicle has almost no shortcomings. Whether it is passability, speed or structural stability, it can meet the daily mission needs of the Field Corps. On such a bad road surface, Kaylan could drive this car to more than 120 yards, and it seemed to have the potential to continue to accelerate. The top of the giant tire with a diameter of 1.2 meters is even higher than the roof of the cockpit. The four tires are now like four springs, supporting the entire car to jump forward on the cracked ground. However, the body's highly enhanced body's crawling speed was far more than 120 yards. He almost crawled into the thick fog several times. It was only because Ze-Logo used the power of space to temporarily restrict his movements that he could let Kaylan not lose his target. This direction, really, leads to the core area of the forest, 33, who was lying on the back seat, said with great difficulty. When he mentioned the core area, the all-terrain assault vehicle hit the ground so hard that he almost bit off the tip of his tongue. I'm not sure, I can only give it a try, Kaylan said, but if this path is wrong, I think my subconscious will remind me. Subconscious? You have never been to the Grey Mist Forest. How can your subconscious know whether this path is right or wrong? Ouch, 33's tongue did not escape in the end. Pass a tribulation. Maybe I've been here before, Kaylan whispered.